Was the worst-case scenario after time travel? Surrounded by formidable foes? Ridiculed by one's family? Reduced to an infant? Starting anew? No, no. No, the true nadir lies in becoming not merely a villain, but a villain on the brink of demise. The silver lining? One has traversed time and begins as the most powerful. The downside? The timing is amiss. Even taking a few steps leaves one gasping for breath. I am Uchiha Madara, and I find myself in a state of utter panic. Given the circumstances, all I can do is take things one step at a time. Where am I? What? You say Hashirama is already dead, and I am the strongest in the ninja world? Chapter 1. The Unwilling Elder. On the battlefield of the Fourth Great Ninja War, the allied ninja forces from various nations surrounded a solitary figure, seemingly poised to be engulfed at any moment. A colossal azure giant suddenly materialized, its four arms forming the in and U seals, while the figure itself executed the C seal with a disdainful expression. Heavenly obstruction, earthquake star. In an instant, the once dominant clouds above were shattered by an unforeseen visitor. A meteor, several hundred meters in diameter, plummeted from the heavens as if it were divine retribution, threatening to annihilate everyone on the battlefield. At that moment, despair gripped nearly all present. Their speed could not rival the meteor's descent. Once it landed, except for the few ninjas resurrected by the impure world reincarnation who possessed immortal bodies, all would meet their end together. Fortunately, the third Tsuchikage and the fifth Kazekage joined forces, barely managing to halt the meteor's fall. A massive hand formed from sand caught the impending disaster. Just as the crowd rejoiced, the figure merely smiled faintly, saying, "Not bad, you managed to stop it." But what about the second one? A larger void suddenly emerged above the clouds, revealing another gigantic meteor, this one double the size of the first. Due to age, Anoki's body was no longer what it once was, and the arrival of this meteor rendered him utterly incapable of holding it back. The fourth division of the Ninja Alliance faced complete annihilation. Unimpeded, Uchiha Madara ultimately ascended to become the Sage of Six Paths after being betrayed. No one came to seal Kagaya, all were ensnared by the infinite Tsukuyami, ultimately becoming White Zetsu. Was it? Who would want to see such a dismal ending? I declare that the conclusion of this tale shall be mine to dictate. In a desolate underground cavern, an elderly man with a head of white hair sat atop a colossal rock statue, conversing with himself. Below the statue, several pale figures murmured amongst themselves. Has Lord Madara been acting a bit strange lately? In what way? He often speaks incomprehensible words and seems to display more varied emotions than before. Well, don't you also frequently utter things I can't comprehend? True, perhaps there's nothing amiss then. This elderly man was none other than Uchiha Madara, once renowned alongside the Sage of the Six Paths, a former clan leader of the Uchiha clan and one of the founders of Konohagakure. The statue upon which he sat was no ordinary effigy, but the remains of the once mighty divine tree, stripped of its chakra by the Sage of Six Paths, now a vessel waiting to be revived into the 10 tails upon the return of the powers of the 9-tailed beasts. Yet curiously, the indomitable Uchiha Madara now bore an expression of despondency, verging on lethargy. Ah, why must it be me, Uchiha Madara, in such an ancient time? Is this merely a cruel joke? Due to unforeseen circumstances, the present Madara was not entirely himself. A soul from another realm had merged with the aging figure of Madara. Now, Madara's mindset resembled that of his younger self during the founding of Konoha, possessing memories from both souls. Theoretically, a soul as seasoned as Madara's could not be swayed by external forces. Yet the foreign soul was laden with excessive information, including the history of his betrayal by Black Zetsu, who manipulated him into becoming the vessel for the resurrection of Kagaya Otsutsuki. How foolish to be controlled by such a being, to sever ties with his closest friend, and to bring about the deaths of so many, only to discover it was all a ruse, and he was but a puppet. Feeling a mix of shame and remorse, Madara chose to relinquish control of his body, allowing the foreign soul to take precedence. "Oh, strange soul, I sense no malevolence from you. I hope you can accomplish greater things than I did, for my sake and for the world." With those words, Madara's consciousness quietly chose to slumber, intending to remain in this state unless a significant event occurred. Complaints aside, his current existence was not particularly dire, though he had to sleep on a hard stone and drink cold mountain spring water. At least he did not have to forage. For food, Black Zetsu would assist with that if one were to voice dissatisfaction. It would stem from his bodily functions waning, necessitating reliance on the outer path's golem to sustain his life, thereby trapping him in this cavern. His only companions for conversation were Black Zetsu, ever ready to extract his innermost thoughts, and a myriad of White Zetsu, whose intelligence fluctuated and whose thought processes were distinctly unconventional. Surely, he could not confide in Black Zetsu. Hey, I am aware that you intend to betray me once I activate the Rinnegan and free your mother, Kagaya, from her lunar prison. Black Zetsu would undoubtedly flee and bide his time for several centuries, awaiting the next individual to awaken the Rinnegan to AS for the White Zetsu. They were even more problematic, all adhered to Black Zetsu's commands, and conversing with them was perilous, as they would easily relay information to Black Zetsu, who relished their peculiar laughter, making normal dialogue impossible. Thus, Madara's sole leisure activity consisted of sitting atop the outer path's golem, occasionally muttering to himself, while remaining vigilant against eavesdropping by Black Zetsu. Recently, however, he conceived an idea that could grant him freedom from the cavern. Alas, this plan could not be divulged to Black Zetsu, and must be executed unbeknownst to him, otherwise he would undoubtedly sabotage it. With this in mind, Madara directed the outer path's golem to lower him underground. No sooner had he steadied himself than a shadow emerged from below. Lord Madara, has your relaxation time concluded for today? A mass of black, gel-like substance spoke, a sight Madara had grown accustomed to. Black Zetsu's true form was indeed this gelatinous entity, comprised of two pupilless yellow orbs and a mouth filled with sharp teeth, resembling a black slime at first glance. When Madara's soul had just merged and he was still disoriented, he was startled by Black Zetsu's appearance. But with time, he had acclimated to Black Zetsu's sudden apparitions. As long as it was an inanimate object, no matter how solid, Black Zetsu could easily infiltrate it, which is why Madara preferred to sit atop the outer paths, golem being a living body. It was impervious to Black Zetsu's intrusion. Madara nodded. Yes, the plan is progressing quite smoothly. I can afford to relax a bit. After a moment's contemplation, he devised a straightforward yet practical plan. Zetsu, investigate the information regarding Konoha. A new round of warfare may soon erupt in the ninja world, and during such times, exceptional ninjas tend to emerge. See if there are any we might require. Understood? I shall proceed immediately. Zetsu summoned the White Zetsu he usually inhabited, merging with it before swiftly disappearing underground. The phase of the Black Zetsu is indeed exhilarating, akin to the ease of having everything arranged for you without a single complaint. If not for the knowledge of this fellow's constant intent to betray, Madara might genuinely believe that Black Zetsu is an extension of his own consciousness. For how could one be so considerate otherwise? Here follows the author's musings. The characterization of White Zetsu has undergone considerable changes initially. It possessed its own thoughts, yet by the later stages of the Fourth Great Ninja War, it resembled mere cannon fodder, only able to make nonsensical sounds, even exhibiting a grotesque stitched form. Thus, in an effort to maintain consistency, certain White Zetsu in the narrative may converse similarly to Akatsuki members, while the majority should simply fulfill their roles as mindless creatures without overthinking, lest it become a source of headache. Chapter 2. Akatsuki Armor. Merge. After dismissing Black Zetsu, the cave was left with a multitude of oblivious White Zetsu. In the absence of orders, they continued to slumber or play, entirely indifferent to the events that had just transpired. Among these White Zetsu, one individual stood out with remarkable vivacity, drawing attention amidst the throng of its kind. This unique entity resembled a human-shaped vortex, devoid of facial features, with merely a black void where its right eye should be. This abstractly styled White Zetsu would eventually become the Akatsuki member known as Obito. During the Fourth Great Ninja War, Obito had also possessed Yamato, unleashing the wood release technique, true hundreds of hands, and could expel jutsu of all 5 elemental natures, even engaging in combat with the reanimated third Hokage. If ordinary White Zetsu could be likened to common monsters, this whimsical Obito could at least be considered elite, capable of sustaining the energy consumption of the wooden golem in terms of chakra quantity. Obito likely surpassed even the 6th Hokage with the Sharingan. Madara Uchiha cast a glance at his aging body, aware that chakra is the wondrous power born from the fusion of physical and spiritual energy. Even disregarding the spiritual aspect, his current physique hardly supported the refinement of chakra. Otherwise, he could swiftly reunite with Hashirama in the Pure Land. With this in mind, he beckoned to Bito, who, sensing the amusement, promptly kicked aside a nearby white Zetsu and eagerly approached Madara's side. The displaced white Zetsu paid no mind, merely scratching its head before rejoining its companions in play. "Hey there, long-haired grandpa, what do you need? Are you asking me to play with you? Just a heads up, I play rough." Despite lacking facial features, Obito spoke with a fluency that surpassed even Madara's current efforts, who found speech to be a laborious task, opting to minimize his words. Thus, Madara chose to disregard Obito's antics. The level of his banter was less amusing than being tormented by a lack of chakra in the duel arena. "You, attach to me, immediately." He attempted to imitate Madara's tone while issuing the command. "Okay, coming right up," Obito responded, and then his body split from the head, transforming into countless writhing white tendrils that enveloped Madara's form, ultimately reconstituting, leaving only a single right eye visible. After Obito's possession, Madara's appearance mirrored that of an enraged Obito, with the only distinction being the style of clothing. Madara struck his fist against the cave wall, instantly leaving an imprint, with numerous spiderweb-like cracks spreading outward until they reached the ceiling. His hand remained unscathed, albeit Obito's incessant chatter began to grate on his nerves. "Ouch, that hurts. I'm dying." "Silence. Quiet down to, oh dear, Grandpa. You truly lack a sense of humor. Shouldn't you be concerned for me at this moment?" Obito promptly ceased his lamentations. For white Zetsu do not possess the sensation of pain. He merely found it amusing. He pouted, finding the cave utterly dull, surrounded by a gaggle of foolish kin, an unamusing elder, and a dark figure. He longed for someone to converse with, ideally to venture outside, for he had no desire to remain in this cave, which offered no entertainment and was dreadfully boring. Madara, however, chose to ignore Obito entirely. He understood that engaging even momentarily would lead to relentless chatter, especially with Obito's voice echoing directly in his ear, making it impossible to escape. Thus, he opted for solitude, immersing himself in the experimentation of ninjutsu. Seeing no response, Obito rambled on for a few moments before lapsing into silence out of sheer boredom. Concerned that Obito's chakra might be insufficient for performing large-scale jutsu like the Heavenly Obstruction Star, Madara selected the Fireball Jutsu, a technique even young Sasuke could master, serving as a fundamental skill of the Uchiha clan. After all, with Obito absent, should he perish, the likelihood of being revived through the Edo Tensei would be slim. Or perhaps not, given Black Zetsu's lengthy wait for a reincarnated eye. Madara suspected that if he did die, Black Zetsu would hasten to resurrect him, for fallen souls cannot serve as Jinchuriki for the Ten Tails. However, as he began his experiment, he encountered a dilemma: how to form the signs for the Fireball Jutsu. In his youth, he had diligently learned the hand seals, yet now they escaped his memory. Just as he was ruminating, his body instinctively began to form the seals: serpent, horse, monkey, boar, tiger. In an instant, Madara had completed the hand signs for the Fireball Jutsu. The surge of searing warmth coursed through him, and as energy gathered in his throat, instinct compelled him to open his mouth. In that fleeting moment, Madara expelled a fireball the size of several men. The roaring fireball, akin to a burning meteor, unleashed a tremendous explosion upon contact with the wall, producing a deafening sound as a massive crater was formed, dust and debris flying everywhere, shaking the entire cave. Hey, Grandpa, do be careful. If this cave collapses, how will we escape underground? You be in serious trouble." Obito attempted to engage Madara in conversation, yet the current Madara Uchiha was wholly preoccupied, fixated on a singular thought. The power of this Fireball Jutsu is immense. When Kakashi tested Naruto and Sakura with this technique, was he not intending to incinerate them? If Naruto failed to evade, it would surely not result in mere severe burns, but rather a complete cremation. Initially, he had intended to experiment with more powerful jutsu, such as the Great Fire Annihilation or the God Tree Birth, but under the present circumstances, he deemed it wise to refrain. The God Tree Birth might not even conclude before the forest collapsed the cave. The Earth Explosion Star or the Heavenly Obstruction Star were likewise out of the question. Not only was chakra concerned, but the former would ensnare all white Zetsu within the cave, and the latter that, well, he had no intention of embodying a mole. Instead, he resolved to attempt techniques that were less ostentatious. Speaking of the Uchiha clan, what is their most notable feature? That's right, the Sharingan. He closed his eyes, channeling chakra to his ocular region, and upon reopening them, His once pitch-black pupils transformed into a vivid crimson. The curse of the red eye is the Uchiha clan's fate, a burden they must bear. The following is unrelated to the main text, purely imaginative. It is widely known that each Meijiki Sharingan possesses unique abilities, such as Shizui's Koto Tsukumi, Itachi's Amaterasu and Tsukumi, and Sasuke's Amaterasu and Kagutsuchi. Yet Madara has never utilized his own Meijiki abilities that it is reasonable to speculate that the second Hokage once mentioned having encountered the Kagaya Tsukuyami, yet it cannot be wielded independently. Thus, it is highly likely that there exists a member of the Uchiha clan possessing the same configuration as the Kagaya Tsukuyami, akin to the second Hokage's abilities. In the Naruto series, only a few individuals are definitively known to possess the power of the Meijiki Sharingan, namely Madara, Izuna, Shursui, Itachi, Sasuke, and Obito. Considering solely the manga, excluding the original anime character Fugaku and the game-exclusive character Uchiha Light, whom I personally favor, that we shall refrain from discussing those whose abilities remain unknown, such as Indra and Sarada, for the moment. The Kagaya Tsukuyami that the second Hokage once encountered is most likely linked to Izuna's Meijiki Sharingan. If it were Madara's, he would have had no reason to withhold that information, so it is plausible that it belonged to another contemporary Meijiki wielder. Izuna is Madara's younger brother, while Sasuke is Itachi's younger brother, and Izuna bears a striking resemblance to Sasuke. Both brothers exhibit profound care for their younger siblings, leading to the conclusion that Madara's Meijiki Sharingan configuration is likely composed of Tsukuyami and Amaterasu.as for the reason behind its non-utilization. I cannot provide an answer that is a question for Kishimoto, and my inquiries would be futile. In summary, the Meijiki Sharingan attributed to Madara is indeed Tsukuyami and Amaterasu. Although it may not necessarily be employed in practice, I merely wish to clarify this point. What is the worst outcome after a transmigration? Being surrounded by formidable foes? Facing scorn from one's family? Starting anew as an infant? No. The true nadir is transmigrating not only as a villain, but as one who is on the brink of death. The silver lining? The journey begins as the strongest. The drawback? The timing of the transmigration is awry, and even taking a few steps leaves one breathless. I am Uchiha Madara, and I am in a state of utter disquiet. Given the circumstances, I can only take it one step at a time. Or can I? What? You say Hashirama is dead, and I am now the strongest in the ninja world? Chapter 1. An unavoidable elderly fate. On the battlefield of the Fourth Great Ninja War, a figure was encircled by the ninja alliance formed by various nations, seemingly on the verge of being engulfed. A colossal azure two-headed giant suddenly appeared, simultaneously forming the tiger and rooster seals with 4 arms, while the figure itself formed the snake seal and spoke with disdain. Heavenly obstruction, starquake. In an instant, the once dominant clouds in the sky were shattered by an unexpected Visitora meteorite, several hundred meters in diameter, plummeted from the heavens as if it were divine retribution, threatening to annihilate all on the battlefield. This moment, despair enveloped nearly everyone. Their speed could never match the meteor's descent. Once it landed, aside from the resurrected ninjas with undying bodies, all present would meet their demise together. Fortunately, the 3rd Tsuchikage and the 5th Kazekage joined forces, barely halting the meteor's fall. A massive hand formed from sand cradled the impending disaster. Just as the crowd rejoiced, the figure merely smirked, quite impressive to have blocked it. But what of the second? A larger void materialized above the clouds, and another gigantic meteor appeared, its diameter even double that of the previous one. Due to age, Noki's body had significantly weakened, and he could no longer withstand the impact of this colossal meteor. The 4th division of the Ninja Alliance was annihilated. Unimpeded, Uchiha Madara ultimately ascended to become the Sage of 6 Paths, and after this betrayal, no one came to seal Kagaya. All were ensnared by infinite Tsukuyami, ultimately becoming White Zetsu. Was it? What a dismal conclusion. I declare that I will determine the story's end. In a forgotten underground cavern within the ninja world, an elderly man with a head of white hair sat atop a grand stone statue, speaking to himself. Beneath the statue, several pale figures whispered among themselves. Has Lord Madara been acting a bit strange lately? In what way? He frequently utters incomprehensible remarks, and his expressions seem more varied than before. Isn't it true that you also often say things I cannot comprehend? Indeed, Perhaps it is nothing to worry about. This elderly man was none other than Uchiha Madara, once renowned alongside the god of shinobi, Senju Hashirama, and the former leader of the Uchiha clan, one of the founders of Konoha. The statue upon which he sat was no ordinary one, it was the remnants of the god tree, stripped of its chakra by the sage of six paths, known as the Outer Paths Golem. Once the power of the nine-tailed beasts returned, it would transform back into the 10 tails. However, curiously, the once dominant Uchiha Madara now bore a countenance of dejection, nearly resembling a salted fish. Ah, how unfortunate it is that it had to be Uchiha Madara. In such an olden time, this is nothing but a cruel jest. Due to unforeseen events, the current Uchiha Madara was not entirely himself. The soul of an otherworldly being had fused with the aging Madara. Now, Madara's mindset was more akin to that of his younger self during the founding of Konoha, with Hashirama possessing the majority of memories from both souls. Theoretically, the seasoned soul of Madara should remain impervious to external influences. Yet, the alien soul carried an overabundance of information, including the knowledge of his future betrayal by Black Zetsu, reducing him to a vessel for the resurrection of Kaguya. Suzuki is so foolish to be manipulated by such a being, to sever ties with his closest friend, and to slay so many, only to discover it was all a fabrication, that he was but a puppet, filled with a mixture of shame and remorse. Madara willingly relinquished control of his body, allowing the otherworldly being to assume dominance. O foreign soul, I sense no malevolence within you. I hope you can achieve more than I have, for my sake and for the sake of this world. Having uttered these words, Madara's consciousness chose to drift into slumber, intending to remain in this state unless something of great significance occurred. Complaints aside, his current existence was not entirely bleak. Although he was confined to a hard stone surface and drank cold mountain spring water, he need not forage for food, as Black Zetsu would procure it for him. That if one were to voice discontent, it might be due to his deteriorating physical condition, which forced him to rely on the Outer Paths Golem to sustain his life, thereby indirectly trapping him in this cavern. The only companions available for conversation, aside from Black Zetsu, who was ever ready to expose his innermost thoughts, were a multitude of white Zetsu, whose intelligence fluctuated and whose thought processes diverged from the norm. That it would be utterly impossible for Madara to confide in Black Zetsu. Hey, I know you plan to betray me once I awaken the Rinnegan, and then free your mother Kaguya, who is imprisoned on the moon. Black Zetsu would undoubtedly choose to flee at that moment and patiently await the next individual to awaken the Rinnegan for several centuries. As for the white Zetsu, they were even less reliable. All obeyed Black Zetsu's commands, and speaking to them would easily betray his intentions. Moreover, they each had a penchant for bizarre laughter, rendering normal communication impossible. Thus, Madara's primary leisure activity consisted of sitting atop the Outer Paths Golem, occasionally engaging in soliloquy while remaining vigilant against Black Zetsu. Eavesdropping. However, recently, he conceived an idea that could grant him freedom from the cavern. Yet this idea had to remain undisclosed to Black Zetsu, as it must be executed without his knowledge. Otherwise, he would surely sabotage it. With this in mind, Madara directed the Outer Paths Golem to place him underground. Just as he steadied himself, a shadow emerged from the depths. Lord Madara, has your time for relaxation concluded? A mass of black, gel-like substance articulated human speech, a sight to which Madara had grown accustomed. Black Zetsu's true form was indeed this gel-like entity, characterized by two yellow orbs devoid of pupils and a mouth brimming with sharp teeth, initially reminiscent of a black slime. When Madara's soul had just merged and his mind was still hazy, encountering Black Zetsu in this form had startled him. However, with time, he had acclimated to Black Zetsu's sudden appearances that, as long as it was an inanimate object, no matter how solid, Black Zetsu could infiltrate it effortlessly, which was why Madara preferred to sit atop the Outer Paths Golem. The Golem, being a living entity, was impervious to Black Zetsu's intrusion. Madara nodded. Yes, the plan is progressing smoothly. I can afford to relax a little. After a moment's contemplation, he devised a straightforward yet effective plan. Zetsu, investigate the intelligence of Konoha that a new wave of conflict may soon arise in the ninja world, and during such times, many skilled ninjas tend to emerge. See if there are any individuals we might require. Understood. I shall depart immediately. Zetsu summoned the white Zetsu he typically possessed, merging with it before swiftly vanishing underground. At this stage, The presence of black Zetsu is indeed invigorating, akin to a life of ease where every need is catered to without a hint of complaint. Were it not for the knowledge that this entity harbors treachery against him, Madara would likely be convinced that black Zetsu is a manifestation of his own fractured consciousness, for its attentiveness is quite remarkable. Here follows the author's musings. The characterization of white Zetsu has undergone significant changes, initially possessing its own thoughts. It devolved towards the end of the Ninja World War into a mere cacophony of noise, akin to the mindless minions, even exhibiting a grotesque hybrid form. To maintain consistency in character development, some portrayals of white Zetsu in the text may resemble that of Obito, while the majority of ordinary white Zetsu adhere to their roles as mindless creatures, lest one become overwhelmed with confusion. Chapter 2. Obito's armor merge. After dismissing black Zetsu, only a multitude of carefree white Zetsu remained within the cavern. In the absence of directives, they continued to slumber or frolic, entirely indifferent to the prior events. Among the myriad of white Zetsu, one individual stood out with remarkable vivacity, drawing attention amidst the throng. This peculiar entity resembled a human vortex, devoid of facial features, with a singular dark void where its right eye should be. This abstract version of white Zetsu would later inhabit Obito for an extended period. During the Ninja World War, this embodiment of Obito had previously possessed Yamato, unleashing the wood release, true hundreds of hands, and demonstrating proficiency in various elemental jutsu while engaging in battle with the reanimated third Hokage. If ordinary white Zetsu could be classified as mere fodder, then this whimsical Obito must surely be considered an elite, capable of sustaining the energy demands of the wooden constructs. In terms of chakra, Obito likely surpassed even the sixth Hokage, who bore the Sharingan. Madara Uchiha cast a glance at his aged form, contemplating the enigmatic power of chakra, which emerges from the convergence of physical and spiritual energies. Even disregarding the psychological aspect, his current physique hardly supported the refinement of chakra within. Otherwise, he could swiftly reunite with Hashirama in the pure land. In light of this, he beckoned to Obito, sensing amusement, promptly kicked aside a neighboring white Zetsu and scampered over to Madara's side. The displaced white Zetsu merely scratched its head, unperturbed, and rejoined its companions in their antics. "Hey there, long-haired grandpa. What brings you to me? Do you want me to play with you?" "Just so you know, I tend to hit hard," Obito quipped. Despite his lack of facial features, his speech flowed more smoothly than Madara's current strained utterances, who preferred to minimize his words. Thus, Madara chose to disregard Obito's antics, finding the creature's banter trivial, feeling it paled in comparison to the humiliation of being bested in the arena. "You, merge with me at once," he commanded, attempting to emulate the authoritative tone of the Uchiha leader. "Sure thing. Coming right up?" Obito replied cheerfully, his form fracturing at the head, transforming into countless writhing white tendrils that enveloped Madara's body, ultimately reconstituting to leave only his right eye visible. Once possessed by Obito, Madara's appearance mirrored that of a furious Obito, the only distinction lying in the style of his attire. Madara struck a fist against the cave wall, leaving a profound imprint, fissures radiating outward like spider webs until they reached the ceiling. His hand remained unscathed, though Obito's incessant chatter began to irritate him. "Ouch, that hurts. I think I'm dying." "Quiet, shut your mouth, Grandpa, you truly lack a sense of humor. Shouldn't you be concerned for me right now?" Obito ceased his lamentations, being devoid of pain. He had merely found it amusing. He pouted, finding the cave utterly dull, surrounded by a throng of foolish kin, a humorless elder, and a shadowy figure. He longed for companionship beyond these walls, someone to engage in conversation and take him on adventures, as remaining cooped up in this cave was excruciatingly tedious. Madara, however, paid Obito no mind, aware that engaging him would lead to an incessant barrage of chatter. Thus, he chose to ignore Obito's presence and resumed his experimentation with ninjutsu. With no response forthcoming, Obito eventually fell silent out of boredom. Concerned that Obito's chakra might be insufficient for executing large-scale ninjutsu, like the Heavenly Obstruction Star, he opted to perform the Great Fireball technique, a skill even a young Sasuke could manage, thus serving as a fundamental technique of the Uchiha clan. After all, with Obito yet to arrive, should he perish, he might not even have the opportunity for reanimation. Or perhaps not, given how long Black Zetsu had awaited the emergence of a Rinnegan. If he were to die, it would likely rush to find someone to resurrect him as the reanimated dead. Could not serve as the Ten Tails Jinchuriki. However, just as his experimentation commenced, he encountered a dilemma: how to perform the great fireball technique. Or the hand signs again. He had learned them during his youthful days of delusion, but now had forgotten entirely. As he strained to recall, his body instinctively began forming the necessary signs. Snake, ram, monkey, boar, horse, tiger in an instant. Madara completed the hand seals for the great fireball technique, and a surge of searing warmth coursed through him, coalescing in his throat, compelling him to open his mouth. In a fleeting moment, he expelled a fireball large enough to engulf several individuals. The roaring fireball, akin to a blazing meteor, erupted upon contact with the wall, unleashing a formidable energy accompanied by a deafening explosion. A massive crater was formed, dust swirling and debris scattering, causing the entire cavern to tremble. Hey, Grandpa, be a bit cautious. If this cave collapses, how will we escape? You'll be in quite a predicament. Obito attempted to engage Madara in conversation, but the current Uchiha was too preoccupied with a singular thought. The potency of this great fireball was staggering had Kakashi employed it during his test of Naruto and Sakura. Was he not attempting to annihilate them? Should Naruto have failed to evade, it would not merely result in severe burns but rather incineration. Initially, he had wished to test even more powerful techniques, such as the Great Fire Destruction or the Birth of the Trees, but given the current situation, it was prudent to refrain. The Birth of the Trees would undoubtedly collapse the cave. The Earth Explosion Stars or Heavenly Obstruction Star were even more implausible aside from chakra concerns. The former would wipe out the white Zetsu within, while the latter did well. He had no intention of playing the role of a mole. The IT was perhaps more prudent to experiment with less conspicuous ninjutsu. Speaking of the Uchiha clan, what distinguished them most? Indeed, it was the Sharingan. He closed his eyes, channeling chakra to his ocular region. Upon reopening them, his once pitch-black pupils transformed into a vivid crimson. The Uchiha's Reedy affliction is an unavoidable fate, one that cannot be escaped. The following is unrelated to the main text, and merely a flight of fancy. It is well known that each Manjiki Sharingan possesses its unique abilities, such as Shizui's Kotoemit's Tsukumi, Itachi's Amaterasu, and Tsukuyomi, Sasuke's Amaterasu, and Kagetsuchi. Yet Madara has never utilized his own Manjiki abilities. That it is a reasonable conjecture that the second Hokage once mentioned having encountered Kagaya's Tsukuyomi, yet it cannot be wielded independently. Thus, there must exist a member of the Uchiha clan who possesses a configuration akin to that of the Tsukuyomi and Kagaya. Within the realm of Naruto, only a select few are explicitly endowed with the power of the Manjiki Sharingan. Madara, Izuna, Shursui, Itachi, Sasuke, and Obito. This list pertains solely to the manga, excluding the original anime's Fugaku and the game-exclusive Uchiha Light, whom I hold in high regard. The abilities of other individuals, such as Indra and Sarada, will not be discussed here. The Kagaya that the second Hokage encountered is likely Izuna's Manjiki Sharingan. If it were Madara's, there would be no reason for him to withhold that information, suggesting that it is probably another Manjiki wielder from the same era. Notably, Izuna is Madara's brother, while Sasuke is Itachi's brother, and Izuna bears a striking resemblance to Sasuke. Both brothers are fiercely protective of their younger siblings, leading to the conclusion that Madara's Manjiki is likely configured with Tsukuyomi and Amaterasu. As for the reasons behind its non-utilization, that remains a mystery one best posed to Masashi Kishimoto, as I have no answers to. In summary, the Manjiki assigned to Madara in this narrative comprises Tsukuyomi and Amaterasu. While it may not be employed, it is prudent to clarify this point. Chapter 3. Behold the third power, Susanoo. Upon awakening the Sharingan, everything around Madara appeared to slow down exponentially. He could discern the precise number of hairs on the heads of the distant white Zetsu with remarkable clarity. This phenomenon exemplifies one of the fundamental capabilities of the Sharingan, enhanced observational acuity, often referred to as the eye of observation. This ability allows one to perceive the chakra within another's body, serving as the foundation for its replication prowess. With the opponent seemingly moving in slow motion, one can effortlessly match their hand signs, synchronously unleashing ninjutsu. In earlier encounters, this ability held significant weight. For instance, Sasuke replicated Lee's Leaf Whirlwind and subsequently conceived the Lion's Barrage, which Naruto later appropriated, transforming it into the spiraling barrage. A particularly notable instance involved Kakashi, the renowned Leaf Village ninja, who, during his confrontation with Zabuza, replicated Zabuza's hand signs in real time, executing the water dragon jutsu simultaneously. This moment stands as an iconic scene from the early days of the Hokage. However, as the narrative progressed and the battles against the Akatsuki escalated, the replication capacity of the Sharingan became largely irrelevant. At that juncture, the adversary's signature techniques were nearly impossible to replicate, such as Deidara's clay creations, Sasori's puppetry, Itachi's Mangeki Sharingan abilities, and Haiden's immortality. The essence of replication merely entails observing the hand signs of the opponent and mimicking them. If the opponent abstains from performing hand signs, what is there to replicate? One cannot simply witness pain unleash Shinra Tensei and expect to master it. Had the Sharingan possessed such formidable strength, the Uchiha clan would have long since unified the ninja world during the Warring States period. Madara sighed, recognizing the narrative's shortcomings. Once the initial novelty wore off, he found the observational and replicative capabilities of the Sharingan somewhat cumbersome. Regarding the purported hypnotic abilities, he suspected his thoughts may not be entirely pure, as his impressions of that term were often associated with elements easily subject to censorship. Though he understood that this hypnosis likely pertains to the Sharingan's enhancement of Jinjutsu, as illustrated in the Book of the Practitioners, where Kurenai and Itachi, both classified as Jinjutsu experts, faced off, resulting in Kurenai being ensnared by her own illusion and unceremoniously kicked into a river. Yet, attempting to experiment with Jinjutsu in this cave seemed futile. Casting illusions at White Zetsu would yield little difference in outcome. With ninjutsu deemed too perilous to employ and Jinjutsu impractical, perhaps he might explore taijutsu? Contemplating this, Madara struck the wall with a few powerful punches, attempting to see if he could execute a technique akin to the Morning Peacock. However, as soon as he landed a blow, Obito's voice echoed in his ear. "Hey, old man, have you been cooped up for too long? Are you getting sick? Why are you hitting the rocks? Is it fun? I'll give it a try next time." Madara reflected on this. Using the wall as a target would indeed yield little insight, especially considering the infamous quote from the Sound Village ninja, Sakan, "Such power can even shatter stone." In that moment, he felt as though he had reached a comparable level of proficiency as that ninja. Madara smashed through a wall, a feat that would only diminish his stature if recounted. After a brief warm-up, he sensed he had effectively acclimated to Obito's enhanced physical capabilities and was ready to attempt summoning Susanoo. Chakra coalesced around Madara, ultimately manifesting as several blue skeletal structures that floated around him, encasing much of his body. Alongside this, a colossal blue arm emerged, encircling one side of his form. This marked the initial stage of Susanoo, the skeletal phase, capable of withstanding a limited degree of damage, yet it could not fully shield the user, leaving portions of the body exposed. Raising his right hand, Madara squeezed, and the giant Susanoo arm mimicked his actions, seizing an unsuspecting White Zetsu that happened to pass by. "White Zetsu, I did not provoke any of you." With no alternative but to play with the White Zetsu, as the only other presence was the rock wall, Madara found amusement in this interaction, knowing that eventually, the multitude of White Zetsu would serve as mere fodder. Despite the considerable crushing force of Susanoo, the White Zetsu exhibited remarkable resilience. Even after being contorted by the grip, it fell to the ground, quickly regaining its composure and scurrying away with an ambiguous expression. "Hey, old man, while these fellows may be dim-witted, please refrain from exterminating them. They count as my companions," Obito persisted, undeterred in his attempt to engage Madara. Yet, Madara was akin to a child who had just acquired a new toy, brimming with excitement. He scarcely registered Obito's words, eagerly initiating the second phase of Susanoo. As an immense quantity of chakra drained from him, the once azure skeletal frame expanded rapidly, gradually forming a complete semi-corporeal structure. Subsequently, flesh and sinew composed of chakra began to burgeon upon the Susanoo skeleton, enveloping him entirely and transforming into a towering blue giant nearly 10 meters tall, encasing Madara without leaving a single gap. Unlike typical Susanoo, Madara's version boasted an additional pair of arms sprouting from its back, presenting a notably unique appearance. However, upon activating the semi-corporeal Susanoo, the previously spacious cave suddenly felt constricted. At eye level, the apex of Susanoo nearly brushed against the cave ceiling. Raising his head would undoubtedly result in a collision. He attempted to maneuver Susanu's arms, and the cave's stalactites suffered greatly as a result. A mere gentle squeeze from Susanoo pulverized the ancient formations, reducing them to dust that swirled through the air. This scene proved quite therapeutic, resembling the act of kneading clay. Here follows a brief interlude of irrelevant knowledge. Susanoo is, in fact, synonymous with Susanoo no Mikoto, or Susanoo, the same deity. Itachi's Susanoo is equipped with the Totsuka blade, Yata mirror, and the Yasakani no Magatama, with the Totsuka blade being a weapon of Susanoo in mythology. Thus, initially, Susanoo likely existed as a unique ability for Itachi, only later becoming a universal skill accessible to all wielders of the Manjiki Sharingan, as even Shursui was granted one. One might ponder, considering the portrayal of Shursui in Ultimate Ninja Storm, how could he have jumped off a cliff if he could harness such power? Surely he should have wielded Susanoo to deliver a couple of blows to Danzo. Chapter 4. I feel overwhelmed. Yet unsure of what to do as Susanoo wreaked havoc within the cave, Obito's exuberant voice echoed, "Wow, old man, this thing is so cool. Can I learn it? Will you teach me? I want to give it a try." Give it up. To wield Susanoo, one must possess the Sharingan. Madara promptly dispelled Obito's impractical aspirations. Historically, aside from a certain exceptionally gifted sage and his son Indra, achieving Susanoo was contingent upon possessing the Manjiki Sharingan, alongside enduring the gradual blindness that accompanied it. If his memory served him correctly, at this moment in time, he was likely the sole possessor of Susanoo within the entire ninja world. Currently, Minato Namikaze had yet to ascend to the status of the fourth Hokage, nor had he earned the moniker of the Yellow Flash. Obito remained several years away from his dark transformation, with his Sharingan still dormant. It was uncertain whether Shursui had awakened his Manjiki, and as for Itachi, he was likely still a student at the Ninja Academy, while Sasuke remained a mere shadow of potential. Even if we take a step back and consider the original character of Uchiha Hikari from Ultimate Storm, according to the timeline, she has yet to join the Akatsuki organization and is likely sealed away in some hidden corner. This is a matter for Madara to ponder. It has little to do with him. Is it truly entertaining to seek out a genuine ancestor when one has nothing better to do? To speak frankly, while the upper limit of her 8,000 spears remains unknown, even Naruto, who possesses the 9 tails, would fall victim to it. And the other Kage would certainly succumb as well. It is no surprise that the Uchiha clan embodies beauty, strength, and tragedy all at once. After a period of demolishing the surroundings and shattering the rocks with Susanoo, Madara finally calmed down and began to earnestly contemplate his next steps. The first and most crucial point to consider is whether he should adhere to the original plot of Madara's plan, the so-called Eye of the Moon plan. Although he is aware that the concept of the Eye of the Moon is merely a fabrication spun by Kagaya's will, aimed at awakening his Rinnegan and thrusting him into the Six Paths mode, only to betray him and use his body to resurrect Kagaya. He realizes that tearing ties with Kagaya would bring no advantages. Firstly, the narrative would undoubtedly shift dramatically, rendering his prior understanding of the story obsolete. Secondly, the current Madara, or rather, the present version of himself, is already an elderly man, with his physical capabilities having deteriorated to their limits. Should he sever ties with Kagaya now, he might only be left to endure a fate akin to Nagato's, relying on a connection to the outer path golem to cling to life. What is even more tragic is that while Nagato can still command the 6 paths of pain, Madara's own situation is devoid of resources, leaving him with nothing but white Zetsu. Where could he possibly procure a body? Setting aside the question of whether white Zetsu could be fashioned into a 6 paths of pain, even if we entertain the notion of using him as a puppet, can one imagine white Zetsu proclaiming, 6 paths of pain, I am here, followed by 6 identical green-haired figures? He simply cannot accept that. Even if he must utilize white Zetsu, it would be as mere fodder for the impure world reincarnation, summoning deceased ninjas to act as the 6 paths of pain, reminiscent of a certain Uchiha Madara in a mask. Thus, at least for now, he cannot afford to confront Kagaya openly. Nor can he allow her to perceive that he is not the original Uchiha Madara, nor does he intend to unleash the infinite Tsukuyami. The issue arises, however, if he follows the original storyline. First, he would need to injure Obito severely, transfer his Sharingan to Kakashi, and then rescue him, all while building rapport and planting a curse mark. When Obito has nearly recovered, he would have White Zetsu inform him that Kakashi and Rin were ambushed by the Mist's Umbu, subsequently manipulating the Umbu to abduct Rin, implanting a curse mark and the 3 tails within her. Ultimately, he would have Obito witness Kakashi kill Rin with his own hands, leading to a furious awakening of the Mangekyo Sharingan, thereby spiraling into darkness and embracing the path of a villain. This plan, however, seems rather unwise. If he follows this trajectory, he can only expect to live a few more years before meeting his demise. Afterward, Obito would bear the name of Uchiha Madara and wreak havoc in the shinobi world, further tarnishing Madara's reputation. Following this route, his next appearance would be in the Great Ninja War many years later. Although it would be exhilarating to single-handedly dominate amidst 100,000 ninja forces, by then, the story would be nearing its conclusion, rendering his efforts seemingly futile. He cannot simply wait to be summoned for the impure world reincarnation and then instantaneously undergo the ritual. Such a fate would ultimately be that of a mere reanimated corpse, and it is not feasible for him to resurrect himself through the cycle of reincarnation. Therefore, adhering to the original plot is certainly not viable. If he were to traverse into this world only to effect no changes, it would all be in vain. At the very least, he must save a few more lives to mitigate the tragedies of the original narrative. What? You say many tragedies were caused by Uchiha Madara? Well, those events have yet to transpire. Do not spread rumors. Besides, it is all Kagaya's fault. She is the one orchestrating the scheme. If blame is to be assigned, it should fall upon Kagaya, and if one is dissatisfied, they may also reproach Danzo. The two of them are the designated scapegoats of the shinobi world, bearing 80% of the blame. While lost in thought, Madara inadvertently dispelled Susanoo, the blue giant dissolving into countless particles of chakra, leaving only the silhouette of a man deep in contemplation. Obito felt somewhat disheartened. He had hoped to witness more of that magnificent figure, with plenty of chakra still remaining. Why did he cease his play? He had intended to ask if he could take control of it, but it now appeared that such hopes were dashed. Perhaps next time, he could secretly create a similar wooden figure to amuse himself. The following is a moment of madness, unrelated to the main narrative. So beautiful, Uchiha Hikari. Possessing Itachi's ocular prowess, Sasuke's visage, Madara's hairstyle, and the quintessential Uchiha character, she is the epitome of a perfect protagonist, even more so than Sarada, the true embodiment of the Uchiha clan. I recommend Boruto to recognize this and swiftly return to the past to marry Hikari, renaming her Uzumaki Hikari. Thank you, Boruto. You know, Sarada is my comrade. We have fought side by side to defeat many adversaries. I have known Hikari for a long time. She is incredibly powerful, and I believe we could create a remarkable chemistry together. Sometimes, making decisions is challenging. After countless days and nights of contemplation, I have resolved to bring my talents to the Uchiha clan. I can hardly wait to don the Uchiha clan attire. As for Sarada, I wish her all the best in Konoha. Oh my, I was caught in a typhoon today. The wind outside is fierce, and there is a power outage. I heard many trees nearby have been uprooted. Chapter 5. For the sake of rescuing his mother, he would do anything. Upon returning to the entrance of the cave, Kagaya was startled to find the walls riddled with gaping holes and the ground strewn with debris. Numerous remnants of trees lay scattered about. He immediately recognized that the wooden fragments were the aftermath of wood release techniques. Had someone invaded the cave shortly after his departure and engaged in battle with White Setsu? Kagaya grew anxious. The current Madara was incapable of combat. A few extra steps would leave him gasping for breath. Should he engage in battle, it was likely that his life would come to an end once the fight concluded. His mother's resurrection depended heavily on him. Before the completion of the infinite Tsukuyami, Kagaya would not permit Madara to face any peril. After all, the talent of mortals was woefully inadequate. After the death of the unfilial child who sealed his mother, he had waited over a millennium, and it was only now that someone had awakened the Rinnegan. Who knew when the next chance would come? Kagaya hurried into the cave, only to find Uchiha Madara sitting calmly on a stone, with Obito squatting nearby, scribbling on the ground. As he opened his mouth to question Madara about the chaos outside, he suddenly recalled that he was still pretending to be a clone created by Madara. He could not contradict him. He had to align himself with him. Thus, relying on his affection for his mother, he swallowed his frustration and respectfully inquired, "Lord Madara, during my absence, has anything occurred in the cave? Why is it so chaotic outside?" Madara scoffed, not even bothering to glance at Kagaya, appearing proud while in reality fearing his own vulnerabilities being exposed. Nothing of consequence. It was merely a whim of mine to engage in a bit of exercise. Do you have any objections? Given that Kagaya's face was devoid of features except for his eyes, It was impossible to gauge his current emotions from his expression. However, the tension in his clenched fists suggested that he was likely not at peace within. If Kaguya had sufficient strength, he would not need Madara to rescue his mother. By now, he would have likely pointed an accusing finger at Madara, launching into a series of cordial inquiries centered around his parents and lineage. Yet, circumstances dictated otherwise. As the foremost filial son in the shinobi world, he endured this minor inconvenience for the sake of rescuing his suffering mother. He would bide his time until an opportunity for revenge arose. Ah, so it was Lord Madara who caused this? I had thought an enemy had invaded, and I worried whether you might be harmed. Heihaku suppressed his inner displeasure and respectfully spoke. At that moment, Afu excitedly ran up to Heihaku, brandishing a drawing board with strange patterns on it, seemingly acquired from nowhere. Look, this is my latest masterpiece. Isn't it splendid? Afu proudly showcased his creation, oblivious to the fact that he himself did not understand what he had drawn. Heihaku scoffed dismissively. What is this supposed to be? At best, it resembles the scribbles of a child. You lot have become too lax, indulging in these meaningless pursuits. Feeling somewhat indignant, Afu retorted, what do you mean by scribbles? The old man said I possess artistic talent, akin to some abstract master. It must be your lack of vision that prevents you from appreciating true art. Heihaku chuckled coldly. An abstract master, you say? The wisdom of Hakuju aligns closely with that of a child, easily swayed by flattery. A bunch of fools, destined only to serve as mere weapons. True art cannot be conjured by haphazard strokes. If this qualifies as art, then every soul on this planet would be an artist. Afu felt a surge of anger. To be deemed worthless by Heihaku was an affront to his perceived genius and a sacrilege against art itself. This grudge, he vowed to remember. Madara, weary of this pointless argument, reflected on the futility of pursuing a career as a painter in the ninja world. In the entirety of the narrative, only Sai had made a name for himself as an artist, relying on his drawings to aid in battle. Oh, but if we were to extend the timeline, perhaps his son Inogen could be included, making them the only two renowned artists in the ninja realm. Ultimately, the world of Hokage revolves around combat. Without fighting prowess, one risks being reduced to a nameless extra, regardless of their status. For instance, the daimyos of various nations, uniformly referred to as the daimyos of their respective lands, hold a status comparable to that of mere umbu operatives within the villages, merely background characters. Yet, one must ponder why the daimyos have not been overthrown. What purpose do they serve? Lost in thought, Madara redirected his attention to the black and white figures before him and impatiently inquired, have you found any results concerning the matter I asked you to investigate? Spare me your irrelevant chatter. Heihaku shot a glare at Afu before reporting the intelligence gathered by Hakuju. Recently, numerous notable young ninjas have emerged across the nations. But due to time constraints, only Konoha's ninjas have been thoroughly documented. Others merely have names attached to them. A disdainful smile crept upon Madara's face. No matter. The so-called villages are nothing but poor imitations of Hashirama. They are hardly worth mentioning. Let us focus solely on the situation in Konoha. Considering the stark disparity in combat capabilities between ninjas and ordinary folk, the existence of daimyos is peculiar. When viewed from any angle, the Hokage embodies the true essence of a ruler. Given the combat prowess of ninjas, it is unreasonable for them to bow before a daimyo, who is merely an ordinary person. Even if one claims reluctance to toil the fields, would it not be simpler to seize power directly? This inconsistency stems from Kishimoto's evolving narrative. Initially, the combat strength of ninjas was not as exaggerated as it later became, remaining within the realm of ordinary human capacity. In other words, at this stage, ninjas were merely individuals with special abilities, akin to elite forces, and could perish from a mere stab. In this context, it was reasonable for ninjas to serve the daimyos, as they were not yet capable of overcoming the non-ninja forces at the daimyo's disposal. Existing as semi-mercenaries was entirely normal. However, as the combat strength of ninjas rapidly expanded, this premise became increasingly abstract. Oh, though I can wield a Susanoo of over 100 meters, I must yield to the words of this commoner, who gained their status through family ties. Is that plausible? Absolutely not. I could single-handedly topple the world. And you expect me to bow to an ordinary person? This notion is reminiscent of certain tokusatsu works, where the leaders of defense forces invent familial ties for themselves. Such absurdity deserves a thorough critique. Chapter 6, Little Black, I never realized you were such a chatterbox. Heihaku feigned agreement while inwardly questioning the situation. This individual, truly the reincarnation of the child of the feather, had evidently inherited that same arrogance. Alas, mother, why did you bring forth those ungrateful sons? It is due to Yuheim and the Yuhua clan that you are sealed upon the moon. Had you borne only me, you would not be imprisoned, and I would not need to bow to these mortals, but could instead remain by your side each day. Thanks to the absence of discernible features, Heihaku's rich inner turmoil went unnoticed by anyone. After a habitual chuckle, Heihaku relayed the intelligence collected by Hakuju. According to the findings, the most renowned young ninja in Konoha was a Nin named Minato Namikaze, a pupil of Jiraiya, one of the legendary Sannin. He excelled in the Flying Thunder God technique created by the second Hokage, as well as a self-developed jutsu known as the Rasengan. It is suspected that he has dabbled in the sage arts of Mount Myaboku, though no one has witnessed him utilize them. He previously triumphed single-handedly against 3 Cloud Village ninjas attempting to capture the new Jinchuriki of the Nine Tails, thereby thwarting their mission to seize the beast from Konoha. Currently, he serves as the supervising Nin for 3 Nin, one of whom, Kakashi Hitaki, was once hailed as Konoha's prodigy, the son of the White Fang, Tsukumo Hitaki. The other 2 are merely average Nin, lacking any exceptional traits. Heihaku interrupted the excited recounting of Minato's exploits, insisting that Heihaku mention another ninja instead of fixating solely on Minato, as he was already familiar with the Yellow Flash and knew he would be elusive. He cared little about Minato's completed missions and wished only for a brief overview before moving on. Heihaku, accustomed to Madara's capriciousness, continued without missing a beat, introducing another ninja. This time, it was Orochimaru, also one of the legendary Sannin and a disciple of the 3rd Hokage, who was considered a strong candidate for the position of 4th Hokage. The 3rd Hokage described him as a genius that appears once in several decades. Having encountered a snake shedding its skin in front of his parents' grave during his youth, the 3rd Hokage deemed it a symbol of luck and rebirth, which sparked Orochimaru's fascination with snakes. Following the deaths of Tsunade's brother Nawaki and her fiancé Dan, Orochimaru became acutely aware of life's fragility and is currently conducting forbidden human experiments in Konoha, exploring potential collaborations. Collaboration? Are you implying a partnership that bypasses Kabuto as an intermediary, leading directly to a resurrection through impure reincarnation? Furthermore, Orochimaru was purely a villain in the beginning, excessively self-centered. Any attempt to collaborate with him would only lead to disaster. Even with significant strength, one might not withstand the traps he lays. True collaboration should wait until the 4th Great Ninja War has redeemed him, preferably during the era of Boruto, when he has become a parent. At that time, he may be quite amiable. Do not doubt it. Orochimaru is capable of infiltrating the Cloud Village, masquerading as a nurse to administer medications to the 8 Tails Jinchuriki, and then quietly scraping off powder after the beast rampages. If one were to truly collaborate with him, even if Orochimaru did not overtly turn against us, the likelihood of him secretly collecting the strands of hair I might drop or discreetly informing Konoha, only to resurrect me after my demise, is exceedingly high. Hence, should you propose a partnership with Orochimaru, he would undoubtedly refuse. Although he possesses the Sharingan, at this juncture, Orochimaru has yet to employ the technique of reanimation, and thus the complications of soul and body disunity do not arise. He promptly dismissed Black Zetsu's suggestion with disdain. Such a being is unworthy, capable of using even his own comrades for experimentation. A selfish individual such as this would inevitably betray us in the future. This is not merely slandering Orochimaru. Those who once placed their faith in him have predominantly met their demise at his hands. The multitude of test subjects is a testament to this. Even if one were to survive numerous trials and emerge from the crowd, the outcome would merely result in becoming Orochimaru's next vessel. The 3 lower nin from the Sound Village and the quartet, who followed Orochimaru's commands, ultimately met the same fate of being discarded as pawns. Kinshiki, with his Kenjutsu, fared even worse, treated by Orochimaru as a mere spare body, diligently battling Gaara until his health deteriorated, without a trace of regret until his last breath. Among those who survived under Orochimaru's influence, Sasuke, Karin, Suigetsu, and Yugo, none harbor any affection towards him, some even bearing animosity. Even Kabuto's loyalty to Orochimaru is questionable. His true concern lies with his adoptive mother, Yakushi-nan. The most direct evidence of this is evident in Boruto, where Kabuto chooses to become the director of an orphanage instead of serving as Orochimaru's assistant, which speaks volumes. Regarding the timeline, I shall refrain from digressing. The specific timeline of Naruto is rather ambiguous, often allowing for a range of years to be written, thus discrepancies may arise. Kakashi was 31 during the Fourth Great Ninja War, and so was Obito, meaning that if Rin were alive, she would also be around 31 years of age, making them contemporaries. Minato, at the time of his death, was 24, which occurred in the 51st year of Konoha. The battle at the Kanabi Bridge took place in the 49th year, merely 2 years prior. Thus, Minato served as Hokage for a little over a year. This implies that the enigmatic masked man, Obito, who instigated the Nine Tails turmoil, was approximately 14 to 15 years old, akin to Naruto at the beginning of Shippuden. Nagato was 35 at his demise, while Naruto was still 16, indicating that Nagato was 17 years older than Naruto. At this point, Obito was 31, and the timeline appears to align closely. Of course, there is a minor inconsistency in the anime, suggesting Yahiko died at the age of 15, placing Nagato in his youth, around 15 or 16. Jiraiya cared for the three of them for 3 years, meaning that even if they had established Akatsuki immediately after Jiraiya's departure, Nagato would have been merely 10 years old, having acquired the Rinnegan at a mere 7. As Nagato is 4 years older than Obito. Obito would have only been 6 at that time, while Kakashi had just become a nin, with 6 years remaining until the Kanabi Bridge incident. Therefore, when Obito encountered Madara, the latter had likely already acquired the Rinnegan. However, in the anime, when Obito met Madara, the latter was in a 3-tomo form, not blind, suggesting he retained some hidden reserves to restore his sight. For the sake of narrative convenience, it would be otherwise absurd for the elderly Madara, now blind, to have nothing to occupy his time. Surely, one cannot expect him to constantly delegate tasks to Black Zetsu, treating him as mere labor. Chapter 7. The main account seems to be compromised. I shall resort to a secondary account. Wait, how old is Kabuto at this point? He appears to be 24 during the Fourth Great Ninja War, while Naruto is 17, placing Kabuto around 5 or 6 years old now. There is no rush. According to the Book of Formation, Kabuto was adopted by Yakushi non only after the conclusion of the Third Great Ninja War, the Kanabi Bridge Battle. A hallmark of that war had yet to occur, meaning Kabuto had not even entered the orphanage. Subsequently, in the 5th year of his espionage, due to Danzo's deception, he severely injured his adoptive mother. As Non could only view a photograph of Kabuto, which Danzo had swapped for another, she failed to recognize him in his near-death state. Ultimately, feeling alienated in the shinobi world and yearning for acceptance, Kabuto accepted Orochimaru's invitation to join the Sound Village, becoming a spy. It is evident that Danzo, being a root of Konoha, is often behind any ill deeds. He is the type who could be blamed for anything, whether warranted or not. Thus, seeking Kabuto too soon feels premature. Even if I brought him along, his lack of medical ninjutsu renders him of little use, especially since I cannot teach him either. It would be wiser to wait at least 2 years for him to learn from Yakushi non before proceeding. The pressing concern remains to address the issue with Tobi. First and foremost, I must avoid any schemes involving infinite Tsukuyami. Even if I were to activate Sage Mode, I would be vulnerable to any external interference. Moreover, I have no desire to engage in conflict with the protagonists. My objective is merely to reclaim my youth, with no inherent conflict with them. There is no need for violence. The original plan remains unchanged. Let Tobi continue to take the blame? This feels unwise, as Tobi would bear my name when committing misdeeds, resulting in blame directed at Uchiha Madara, ultimately to my detriment. If I were to adhere to the initial strategy, Rin would undoubtedly become a sacrificial pawn. This seems excessively cruel, not in line with my character. I cannot simply alter the narrative to have Rin perish in an explosion meant for Kakashi, can I? Setting aside the morality of such an act, should Kakashi die, who would fill the void of the 6th Hokage? It cannot be Tobi. That would be a farcical joke. Speaking of which, doesn't T. White Zetsu possess the ability to absorb chakra and impersonate others? He managed to infiltrate the 5 Kage summit without being identified. It was only when Naruto acquired the malice detection from the Nine Tails that he unraveled White Zetsu's disguise. Prior to that, no one had noticed anything amiss. Perhaps I could have White Zetsu impersonate Rin, taking the fatal blow from Kakashi's Raikiri? This would ensure the plot progresses smoothly without invoking my conscience. What? You wonder if sacrificing white Zetsu would weigh on my conscience? Not in the slightest. Although he is referred to as hundreds of thousands of white Zetsus, the actual number is not significant. Losing a few is inconsequential. Ultimately, white Zetsu is merely a biological weapon created by the god tree. In life, he may not have even been human, as animals are also susceptible to the effects of infinite Tsukuyomi. Therefore, there is no need to regard white Zetsu as human, nor even as a typical life form. After all, how many living beings can merge with their kind to transform into a giant pitcher plant with multiple heads? That image alone is rather grotesque. I've conducted a rough feasibility calculation in my mind. Presently, Minato does not harbor the Nine Tails within him, rendering him incapable of sensing malice, and neither Kakashi nor Tobi should notice anything unusual. The only dilemma lies in how to orchestrate Rin's apparent death. She cannot simply be returned to the village, as Tobi would see through the deception, nor can she remain hidden in a cave, as eventually the two would encounter each other by chance, and my ruse would be exposed, leading to an awkward situation. Scratching his head, he pondered how challenging it is to be the good guy. One must consider this and that. It is no wonder that many say that falling into darkness grants one tenfold strength, while redemption weakens one thrice. Once one casts aside their morals, many issues become remarkably simpler to resolve. It is akin to two individuals engaging in combat. One hesitates to strike for fear of causing harm, while the other strikes with lethal intent. In scenarios where their strengths are relatively equal, the one who fights ruthlessly tends to emerge victorious. In light of the necessity to alter the future wherein Lin is slain, while striving to maintain the integrity of the narrative, it is imperative to devise a new possibility for her. Firstly, there is no way for her to continue as a Konoha ninja. Allowing Obito to witness the tragic spectacle of his comrades engaging in mutual destruction is unacceptable. He remains the same humorous underachiever of the Uchiha clan, and he may never awaken the Mangeki Sharingan in this lifetime. Should Lin be relocated elsewhere, it would require his personal intervention, as neither the intellectually limited white Zetsu nor the cunningly deceptive black Zetsu can be relied upon. However, should he detach himself from the Outer Path's golem for an extended period, his physical vitality would rapidly diminish, leading to his demise, thus confining him to this cave. This predicament must be resolved first. A multitude of solutions surged through his mind, including but not limited to an immediate self-termination followed by resurrection via white Zetsu's impure world reincarnation, or disguising the Ten Tails corpse as a human. After eliminating the majority of options due to severe side effects or implausibility, he considered a relatively viable solution: the shadow clone technique. This technique differs from the ordinary clone technique in two significant ways. Firstly, shadow clones possess an independent consciousness and a certain degree of resilience against damage, returning memories and experiences to the original upon dissolution. Secondly, the shadow clone technique evenly distributes the user's chakra, making it impervious to detection by even those wielding the Byakugan or Sharingan. Naturally, as Uchiha Madara, he would not employ the inherently malevolent shadow clone technique developed by Senju Tobirama. Instead, he would utilize Hashirama's wood clone technique. The jest aside, the wood clone technique offers greater durability, thus avoiding the embarrassment of being dispersed by a mere slap, as would occur with shadow clones. Meanwhile, Black Zetsu continued to expound on recent significant events in the ninja world, such as the disappearance of the third Kazekage and the ongoing conflicts among the villages. However, Madara's attention was elsewhere, preoccupied with the concept of creating a secondary identity. Today, he refrained from his usual eccentricities, merely lamenting, "Dear friends, who understands? The typhoon on the 14th has just passed, and another is expected on the 15th. The humidity here has surged, and I shall soon transform into a fashionable individual drenched in moisture." Chapter 8. The struggles of Black Zetsu and the leisure of legends. Black Zetsu indeed possesses a remarkable proficiency in intelligence gathering. The information recently acquired by White Zetsu compelled him to speak for an extended period. The contents of this intelligence were quite sensational, ranging from the third Hokage, Hiruzen Tsurutobi, using a crystal ball to spy on a women's bathhouse, to the sage Jiraiya visiting the same establishment for artistic endeavors, encompassing both pertinent and irrelevant details. Even though Madara focused predominantly on refining his cloning technique, snippets of information occasionally reached his ears, eliciting a raised eyebrow. Fortunately, White Zetsu is devoid of gender and desire. Otherwise, with its shape-shifting abilities and combat prowess nearing that of a Nin, it could wreak havoc on countless individuals. For instance, a single white Zetsu infiltrating a civilian residence could drain chakra and eliminate all inhabitants, subsequently masquerading as a victim to deceive the ninja arriving to investigate. Under the cover of darkness, it could ambush and slay a Nin, then assume their form, seamlessly integrating into a ninja village. During missions, teammates might inadvertently meet untimely ends. This scenario involves merely one white Zetsu. If numerous white Zetsu collaborated, they could potentially usurp entire small ninja villages, replacing everyone except the leader with their kind, thus becoming the de facto rulers. After all, in a colossal village like Konoha, the number of Nin and above is at most 20 to 30,000. Smaller villages might boast 4 to 5,000 Nin at best. While Madara had never precisely counted the number of white Zetsu, he had recently observed the vast array of chakra beneath the outer path's golem, which was nearly blinding, stretching infinitely before him. Imagine a reality where friends are no longer allies, and betrayal lurks around every corner. A comrade, once steadfast, suddenly strikes, absorbing chakra before assuming your appearance before your very eyes. This is a terrifying prospect. During the Great Ninja War, even a handful of infiltrating white Zetsu succeeded in eliminating a significant number of invaluable medical ninjas, instilling fear and distrust within the allied shinobi forces. Had it not been for Naruto's Nine-Tails chakra possessing the ability to detect malevolence, the concealed white Zetsu within the coalition would have remained undetected, leading to its disintegration. Alas, the inability of white Zetsu to serve as a clone meant he must devise a secondary identity through other means. After Black Zetsu completed his report, he respectfully bowed his head, patiently awaiting Madara's response, convinced that his detailed briefing would leave even the proud Madara with no grounds for criticism. As he anticipated, Madara found no fault, for he had scarcely listened. Much of the information was already known to him. He held no interest in the matrimonial affairs of the Sarutobi clan, nor the 4-year-old son of Fugaku, though he did need to keep an eye on Itachi to prevent him from annihilating the Uchiha clan. There were indeed some significant revelations, such as the emergence of Uchiha Shursui, hailed as the foremost expert of the Uchiha clan during this ninja conflict. He had successfully awakened the Manjiki Sharingan, though it remained uncertain whether he could activate Susanoo. Madara vaguely recalled that Shursui's Susanoo was green, adorned with an orange tomo within its chest armor, capable of firing green chakra arrows known as Tsukuyami. The weapon was described as a massive drill sword, personally designed by Kishimoto, but since it only appeared in a video game, Madara's recollection of Shursui's Susanoo was rather hazy. However, during this period, Shursui could likely only activate the initial phase of Susanoo, which merely resembles a skeletal form. It is far from achieving the complete form. It is unlikely he could even reach the second phase. Why, you ask? If Shursui could unleash the full Susanoo at this juncture, his title would not be Shursui of the Body Flicker, but rather Legend of the Ninja World. At that point, there would be no need for a third Great War. Who could possibly contend against a complete Susanoo? Would it be Inoki's clumsy dust release or Gaara's sand techniques? Surely, one couldn't rely on the third Raikage. At present, Shursui should have only recently awakened his Manjiki Sharingan, and he might not even be capable of utilizing the Heavenly Transfer technique, let alone Susanoo. As the sole owner of the Manjiki within his clan, the ability to access the initial stage without a mentor marks him as exceptionally gifted. He straightened his posture, wearily gesturing towards Black Zetsu with a raspy voice. I understand. You may leave. Black Zetsu offered a symbolic bow to Madara before preparing to depart, vanishing into the ground like a shadow, leaving no trace behind. Although Obito had attentively listened to Black Zetsu's report, he retained none of the details. Merely hearing a plethora of names. Who cares? None of it compares to the joys of drawing. Obito, cease your frivolities and come here, Madara beckoned, recognizing Obito's essential role in his plans. Upon hearing Madara's call, Obito promptly approached, his face smeared with paint of unknown origin. What is it, old man? Do you require my assistance again? Madara ruffled Obito's hair, speaking earnestly. I am about to undertake a significant endeavor that will benefit many. Would you be willing to assist me? Obito immediately stood tall, exclaiming, a good deed? I relish good deeds. Whatever it is, count on me. I need you to merge with my shadow clone, providing chakra to sustain it for an extended duration. Can you manage that? Madara stated plainly, revealing his plan without reservation. With Obito's support, The clone would possess ample chakra, while libido could serve as a protective measure, compensating for the vulnerability of the wood clone when struck, which would otherwise dissipate into wooden fragments. As for the downside, perhaps he would simply need to wear 2 layers of clothing when venturing outside. After all, it is impossible to merge with Afe without clothing, nor is it feasible to run about unclad after the fusion. Even though Afe, being a manifestation of white Zetsu, may lack a sense of shame, he still possesses a modicum of dignity and does not wish to be perceived as a pervert. Utilizing the remaining chakra, Madara clapped his hands, summoning a wooden clone of himself that emerged from within. Once detached from Madara's body, the clone's originally wooden skin instantaneously transformed to flesh color, and its robe mirrored Madara's exactly, as if gazing into a mirror. The clone locked eyes with the original. Since the clone's memories and personality mirrored Madara's precisely, there was no need for words, as the clone understood fully what was to be done. You want me to take care of the child, don't you? I have no objections, but this idea of yours is rather flawed. There is but one Afe. How will you manage so many afterward? The clone, exhibiting a degree of independent thought, began to mock the original, yet he grossly underestimated Madara's penchant for pettiness. Thank you for your reminder. Thus, all subsequent tasks will fall upon your shoulders. The clone's expression changed dramatically. He realized he had spoken out of turn and quickly pleaded for mercy. Brother, I was wrong. I was merely jesting. Your idea is splendid. I couldn't have thought of it even if I tried 10 times. Madara, unperturbed, replied coolly, Oh, is that so? You find it agreeable? Then I shall entrust everything to you. After all, you mentioned there is only one Afe. The clone's mind raced, quickly concocting a justification. Don't forget, when a clone is dismissed, it brings back all the fatigue. If I were to overexert myself and perish, you would not escape unscathed. Oh, then do take care not to overexert yourself. Feel free to die as often as you wish. Knowing oneself best, Madara understood that the clone was merely trying to evade work. The dialogue continued, revealing the nature of the clones and their plight. Isn't it ironic that while white Zetsu resembles humanity, it is not truly human? Can white Zetsu be considered a form of pseudo-human? The names like Krasengan and Jiraiya's double. What on earth was Minato thinking? Thanks to Jiraiya's inspiration, I shudder to think what Naruto might have been named otherwise. A trivial fact, Kisame is actually only about 10 years younger than Itachi, having been merely 29 years old upon his first appearance, younger than Kakashi, though he appears older. Chapter 9. Who dares to accuse this official in court? Aminos, do listen to your own words. What do you mean by if it gets too tiring, just die? Where's your conscience? The clone, indignant, vowed to voice the grievances of countless oppressed clones. I am human, and thus my words are certainly human words. Moreover, I possess a conscience. I have graciously afforded you the opportunity to do good. Madara shrugged, indicating that the clones were not entitled to human rights. The clone's fists clenched in frustration. Were it not for his physical limitations, he would have engaged in a confrontation with the original. It was indeed miraculous that Naruto, with his myriad shadow clones, had never brawled with the original. Oh, but wait, wasn't there that incident on the way to Turtle Island where Naruto's clones did express discontent? It was only their good natures that led to a peaceful resolution. Meanwhile, Afe observed Madara's interaction with the clone, feeling neglected, and promptly shouted in Madara's ear, Hey, old man, didn't you ask me for help? You ought to have the clone cooperate. It's tough to manage alone. Madara shot a glare at the clone, chastising it first. Look at you. It's precisely because you refuse to cooperate that even Afe cannot stand it. How dare you be so shameless? You intended to use me like a beast of burden. I am merely asserting my rightful entitlements. The clone retorted furiously, feeling that it was unfair to bear the blame alone. Climb, climb, climb. What entitlements does a mere clone possess? Naruto's many clones merely toil day in and day out, enduring hardships without pay, all year round. You should consider yourself fortunate to have time to rest. Upon reflection, the clone recognized the truth in this. Shadow clones typically found themselves in 2 situations, either taking hits for the original or joining in the fray alongside the original. They served as cannon fodder before the start of Shippuden, continued as fodder thereafter, and in the Great Ninja War, they remained mere fodder. A fate worse than that of beasts. A bead of cold sweat trickled down the clone's forehead as he began to reassess his situation. At least he wouldn't be summoned just to be beaten up. Perhaps working a bit harder was indeed acceptable. With a long sigh, the clone finally merged with Afe, and after donning a tattered blue cloak that had been unearthed from an obscure corner, he appeared considerably more dignified, perhaps worth 298. Thanks to the original's experiences, the clone swiftly adapted to the changes that accompanied Afe. As Afe enveloped him, his speech became somewhat muffled. Shouldn't you be quietly perishing in a chair now, instead of removing the tube? The clone's mouth was rather irreverent, yearning to prod the original. Fully aware of the implications, yet unable to resist the urge to jest, Madara smirked slightly, retorting, "Oh, have you forgotten? If the original perishes, the clone vanishes as well. I could venture off to the Pure Land for a game of cards, but you would have to wait for my return via reanimation." Having momentarily indulged in banter, the clone realized he had overlooked this crucial detail, forcing him to change the subject. "By the way, there is still some time until the Godless Bridge. Shouldn't you pay a visit to Nagato? Otherwise, who do you intend to rely on for the resurrection jutsu, Obito?" Afe, listening to their exchange, appeared perplexed. "Who is Obito? I've never seen anyone else here before. Could it be an acquaintance from the past?" Madara stroked his chin in a nonchalant manner. "I cannot personally go. If anything, Black Zetsu would have to deliver the message. Besides, according to our plan, Nagato need not even summon the Geto Mazo. What would be the point? Are you hoping to find some other unfortunate soul to utilize the resurrection jutsu? The Rinnegan is not something just anyone can wield." The clone, curious, thought there should be no suitable candidates in his memories. After all, Nagato only managed to sustain the Rinnegan's demands due to the Uzumaki clan's robust chakra. Even so, when he eventually appeared, he seemed half dead. While it is true that the price of performing the resurrection jutsu is the caster's life, it does not imply that a person must be the one to perform it, Madara stated calmly. Afe grew increasingly bewildered. What was this resurrection jutsu? Why did it lead to death? Which individual had devised such a technique? The clone was equally confounded. What did it mean to say that it needn't be a person to perform it? Had scientific ninja tools advanced to the point of releasing ocular techniques? This was hardly the era of Boruto. Madara shook his head in lamentation, stating that the clone was still too naive, lacking imaginative leaps and daring ideas, confined within conventional frameworks. In simpler terms, his creativity was insufficiently expansive. Since white zetsu can be utilized as material for reanimation, and since reanimation requires living beings, it stands to reason that white zetsu could also be considered a form of living entity. If that is the case, why not implant the Rinnegan into white zetsu and have it perform the resurrection jutsu? This is not mere folly. In the manga, there was a test subject of Orochimaru named Uchiha Shin. Although the surname was self-assigned, he was not genuinely of the Uchiha clan. Due to his unique constitution, he exhibited no rejection to any implanted tissue, allowing Orochimaru to embed numerous Sharingan within him. Danzo's arm was sourced from him. While it could be posited that he might also wield the resurrection jutsu, the true focus lies not with him, but with his clones. Each clone of Uchiha Shin possesses a 3-tomo Sharingan and can even unlock the Manjiki Sharingan, which is quite formidable indeed. Since clones can wield the kaleidoscopic Sharingan, it stands to reason that the white zetsu, created by the divine tree, should also be capable of utilizing the Rinnegan. As for your inquiry regarding the plan, why not resurrect oneself using the Rinnegan now? The answer is rather straightforward. The Rinnegan can indeed bring the deceased back to life. But fundamentally, it merely transfers the soul from the Pure Land back into the physical body, thereby achieving the illusion of resurrection. However, it does not restore the deceased to their youthful state. Hence, if one were to directly employ the Rinnegan, the resurrected individual would still be an elderly person, indistinguishable from their current self. Therefore, it is essential to first utilize the impure world reincarnation technique and subsequently apply the Rinnegan on the reincarnated version of oneself to achieve the desired rejuvenation effect. Furthermore, there is a profound lack of trust in Black Zetsu. Should he perish, control would entirely shift to it, leaving no say in the timing of his resurrection. Who knows when he would be resurrected after being summoned from the impure world, perhaps even amidst the onset of the Ninja World War. Thus, this plan remains in the conceptual phase for now. The immediate priority is to address the issues surrounding Obito and Nagato, while other matters must be set aside for the time being. Chapter 10. The harmonious relationship of priorities. Madara patted his clone's shoulder, casting a meaningful glance in his direction. When you visit Konoha, do remember to bring back some local specialties. You know I have a penchant for artistic creations. As a unified being, the clone naturally understood, donning an expression that conveyed mutual comprehension. Understood, understood. Our tastes align perfectly. I shall procure something splendid for you, even with only one eye exposed. The hint of a youthful smile peeked through the swirling mask. Having mastered the Sharingan, it would indeed be a disservice to the populace not to utilize it without illusion techniques. Achoo, achoo, achoo. Why do I suddenly feel an ominous premonition? Could it be that someone is about to complain about the Uchiha clan again? In the grand hall of the Uchiha clan's leader in Konoha, Fugaku instinctively tightened his clothing. The recent conflicts have escalated, and even he, as the captain of the Konoha Guard, had been on missions for half a month consecutively. After finally securing a day of respite, he hoped no one would come to complain about a clan member causing trouble, thus ruining his rare day of relaxation. Sipping gently from his warm tea, he tenderly watched Itachi, who was playfully being a nuisance in Mikoto's arms, feeling as though the fatigue of the past 2 weeks had dissipated in that moment. With a gentle and virtuous wife, a clever and obedient child, and a generally commendable group of clansmen, Fugaku felt profoundly content. In these tumultuous times, having a home to call his own was no small blessing. Itachi had recently expressed a desire to witness the battlefield, but he was still too young. No matter how dire the village's situation, they would never permit such a young child to enter the fray. Although Itachi was undoubtedly gifted and destined to become a formidable ninja, his inherent gentleness bordered on a troubling softness, leaving Fugaku concerned whether he would show mercy to adversaries in the future. Perhaps once the situation improves, he could allow Itachi to train with sure sway. As a ninja, excessive gentleness is not a virtue. Fugaku had witnessed too many tragedies born from leniency. Shifting back to the nameless cave, Uchiha Madara was outlining tasks for his clone. Despite their shared mindset, he felt the need to confirm once more for reassurance. Find a way to acquire a legitimate identity in Konoha. It will be necessary later. Avoid conflict as much as possible, and if it arises, ensure your true identity remains concealed. Aim to earn some money. We wouldn't want to end up unable to afford a bowl of Ichiraku ramen. The clone silently instructed Zetsu to block his ears, isolating him from the external world. He had never realized he was such a hidden chatterbox. Time passed, and Madara finally concluded his instructions. Just as he intended to ask the clone if he had retained the information, he was met with the sound of snoring. Well, I'm parched from speaking, and this fellow stands there sleeping. Huh? I was considering whether to have the clone switch places, but it seems one is sufficient. Madara casually picked up a fist-sized stone from the ground, weighing it in his palm, estimating that it would not be lethal. He then rolled up his sleeves and swung it towards the clone's head. Who dares to threaten me? The clone, half awake, sensed an imminent threat and immediately opened his eyes, grabbing the stone and crushing it effortlessly. Threatening me? I'll have you transformed into a eunuch. Believe it. Madara's temper flared. This fellow had the audacity to sleep and then speak so arrogantly. A heavy-handed response was warranted. What? Do you plan to cultivate the Sunflower Sutra? I'm indifferent. I can accompany you in practice. The clone's ability to retort seemed to surpass the original, adeptly seizing upon the gaps in Madara's speech to counterattack, while Madara often found himself rendered impotent in his rage. Yet, the clone remained merely a clone. It could not overturn the heavens. Madara calmly issued a command to Zetsu. Zetsu, restrain him, tighten it a bit more, just enough to avoid damaging the clone. Upon receiving the order, Zetsu immediately cut off the chakra supply and continuously tightened its grip, rendering the clone breathless. Initially, the clone attempted to struggle, but upon realizing escape was futile, he surrendered without resistance. Brother, I was merely jesting. As a clone, I naturally wish for your well-being. Humph, seeing your attitude is somewhat sincere. I shall spare you this time. Madara waved his hand, signaling Zetsu to release the clone, lest he truly be harmed, which would necessitate another summoning. The chakra within him was dwindling. The outer path's golem had been absorbing it for over a decade, leaving little remaining. Every bit saved was beneficial. It's good that you acknowledge your mistakes. Now, recite what I have just conveyed. If you err, I shall learn the art of seduction, believe it. You mentioned acquiring a legitimate identity, avoiding trouble, and finding ways to earn money. Although the clone had dozed off midway, their thoughts were aligned, and mere guessing could yield a fair approximation. Excellent. It appears we indeed think alike. I must handle Black Zetsu here. The rest is up to you. The clone, uncharacteristically serious, nodded vigorously before striding towards the cave entrance without a backward glance. Their earlier quarrel was merely to enliven the atmosphere. Their goals were intrinsically aligned, making conflict impossible. A little-known detail about Naruto. It is known that Fugaku lived to the age of 40. Itachi is 7 years older than Sasuke. And during Sasuke's 7th year, the Uchiha clan experienced the Night of the Massacre, placing Itachi at approximately 13 or 14 years old at that time. Due to the unique method of calculating age in Naruto, everyone collectively ages by 1 year at certain intervals, making specific ages difficult to ascertain. From Itachi's age, we can derive Fugaku's age. When Itachi was born, Fugaku would have been around 26. For reference, during Boruto's era, Naruto is 32 years old, and Boruto is 12, indicating that Boruto was born when Naruto was 20. However, one might wonder, shouldn't births occur earlier during wartime? There seems to be a discrepancy. Let us examine other father-son pairs. The third Hokage, Hiruzen, passed away at 69, while Asuma was 31 years old. Given that there was a 4-year gap between the original series and Shippuden, Asuma would have been 27 at that time, meaning Hiruzen was 42 when Asuma was born. No wonder he resorted to peeping into the women's bathhouse with a crystal ball in his old age. It seems one's heart remains youthful even as age advances, giving birth to a second child at over 40. In the theatrical version, Naruto is 19, considering the nearly year-long gestation period. Hinata must have conceived shortly after their marriage at the end of the film. Chapter 11. Arrival at the pinnacle of the ninja world, Konoha. In the absence of the main body, the clone is also referred to as Madara. Perched on a large tree outside the gates of Konoha, a shadowy figure concealed by the leaves discreetly observed the bustling crowd below, remaining undetected by anyone. This enigmatic individual was, in fact, a wood clone of Madara, who had merged with White Zetsu. Thanks to Akatsuki's unique ability to meld with any material and move swiftly, he arrived at the entrance of Konoha village in no time. However, he encountered a dilemma. 2 imposing gatekeepers stood guard. After passing through the relatively lax scrutiny of the guards, Madara, the reincarnation of Indra, the son of the Sage of 6 Paths and the most powerful leader in the history of the Uchiha clan, finally returned to Konoha. Upon stepping through the gate, he immediately spotted the Hokage rock on the distant Hokage mountain, adorned with the likenesses of past Hokages. Yet, the current Hokage rock differed from his recollection. Due to the passage of time, it now featured only the faces of the first Hokage, Hashirama Senju, the second Hokage, Tobirama Senju, and the current third Hokage, Hiruzen Sarutobi. After receiving a bit of monetary assistance from a few kind-hearted individuals, whose identities remained undisclosed, Madara found himself with a modest sum, allowing him to avoid spending his first day in Konoha on a mission. With some time before the battle at the Sacred Bridge, he decided against rushing to find Minato's team and instead opted for a leisurely excursion, perhaps to savor the renowned Ichiraku ramen, which was said to be the favorite of the future 7th Hokage, and to catch a glimpse of the legendary Tsutsuki Ichiraku. Though the mention of Tsutsuki Ichiraku was meant in jest, visiting Ichiraku ramen posed no harm. He considered it a pilgrimage to a sacred site. Madara had initially intended to engage in further conversation with the ramen chef, but the restaurant was bustling with customers, and the chef was overwhelmed, unable to spare even a moment to chat. As Madara observed the chef's frantic pace, he felt it inappropriate to impose further, so he bid farewell and prepared to leave. However, just as he stepped outside, a familiar voice called out from behind him. "Hey, old man, I'm back." Feigning calmness and pretending to have everything under control, Madara noted that while he had missed the opportunity to stop the exuberant youth who dashed past him, preventing him from introducing himself to Kakashi, there was still ample time before the battle at the Sacred Bridge. He resolved to explore Konoha, perhaps encountering Might Guy, who often jogged around the village, or Minato, who had just returned home via the Flying Thunder God technique. Additionally, he planned to procure some local specialties to take back with him, such as the famed Paradise of Affection. However, he had only heard that after the Ninetales incident, the Uchiha clan had been forcibly relocated to the outskirts of Konoha. He pondered where the Uchiha had resided before the relocation, as the Ninetales was currently safe within Kushina's womb. Just as he contemplated utilizing Akatsuki's ability to search from house to house, a boy with spiky hair and goggles passed by him. If his eyes did not deceive him, the boy's orange goggles and blue-black jacket were unmistakable. Initially, Obito felt somewhat aggrieved, as he was not the only clan member to bring friends home, yet he alone was halted by the guards. However, he soon deflated, realizing that he was the only one among his peers who had yet to awaken his Sharingan, while others had already attained the 3 Tomo. If not for his diligent training in taijutsu and ninjutsu, he might not have passed the CH Nin exam this year and become a CH Nin. The clan would likely have encouraged him to abandon his aspirations of becoming a ninja. Obito led Madara to a slightly larger house among the others, gently knocking on the door. With a creak, a small head peeked out, none other than the young Itachi Uchiha. "Are you here to see my father? He is home resting today. Please come in." Madara gazed at the little one, causing Itachi to shyly retreat slightly. It was hard to imagine that the current Itachi would, in a few years, be responsible for the deaths of his own kin. Oblivious to Madara's penetrating gaze, Obito assumed Itachi was simply intimidated by strangers and crouched down to ruffle Itachi's hair. When Madara departed Konoha, he had once rallied his clansmen to leave with him. Yet none followed, having grown accustomed to the peace of Konoha. Upon his solitary return, he wielded the Nine Tails in an attempt to obliterate the village he had once helped establish alongside the first Hokage, ultimately leading to a desperate battle where the first Hokage barely defeated him. If he had truly survived and returned to Konoha, what could his intentions be? Did he harbor resentment against those who refused to follow him, seeking revenge against the Uchiha? After a one-sided conversation with Fugaku, Madara gleaned some insights about the current leader of the Uchiha clan. Fugaku, it seemed, was somewhat soft-hearted, easily swayed by the desires of others despite possessing his own convictions. He was caught between the interests of his clan and the village, ultimately deciding to avoid conflict between father and son, willingly accepting his fate at the hands of his own child. After shouting towards the riverbank, Madara felt a sense of clarity wash over him, but he quickly remembered he was not in the wilderness, but rather at the river within the village. He glanced around, relieved that few people frequented the riverbank. Thus no one had witnessed his earlier outburst. Otherwise, his first day in Konoha would have ended in social embarrassment. Should anyone have discovered his actions, he would have employed Genjutsu to erase their memory of the event, compelling them to forget what they had seen and return to their own affairs. Unless, of course, the Sage of Six Paths intervened. Kushina bit her finger, reflecting on the unpleasant words of the fox. The fact that Madara, who had once nearly controlled the Nine Tails to annihilate Konoha, was still alive posed a dire threat to the village. In the past, the legendary Senju Hashirama had defeated Madara, but now the first and second Hokages had passed, and the third Hokage was aging. Even the young ninjas who had recently graduated from the Ninja Academy had been sent to the front lines. In this context, should the rumor of Madara's resurrection circulate, it would undoubtedly dampen the morale of the village. Madara observed the still red cheeks of Guy and was momentarily reminded of the time he had seen him in a wheelchair during the Boruto era. His relentless determination from a young age had inevitably led to that outcome. "Hey, old man, Kakashi is inside. You should hurry in. I need to take a breather." Kai did not perceive any wrongdoing in his actions. After all, making amends is an endeavor that embodies youth. Observing Kai gasping for breath, Madara felt as though he might collapse at any moment. Unfortunately, he lacked medical ninjutsu. Otherwise, he would have tended to Kai's injuries. Of course, Madara was neither one of those transfer students wielding peculiar smartphones nor a muscle-bound creature with golden hair. He held no interest in the likes of Rin, a mere young girl of 10. His sole curiosity lay in observing how the bonds among the three members of Minato's class would evolve in the absence of external influences. Cease. Do not continue fighting. Coughing, Madara chuckled at the thought of that scene. Had he not remembered that Kakashi was training nearby, he might have been unable to stifle his laughter. Madara felt a sense of déjà vu. Kakashi resembled a certain unnamed Uchiha, who, although disdainful of everyone, exhibited a surprising internal contradiction. Just as he prepared to rise, a commotion erupted at the training ground's entrance, where a boy with orange goggles and a spiky hairstyle stood shouting, "Hey, Kakashi, quickly look at Kai." Obito, having noticed Kai sprawled on the ground, stepped back in fright. "Wow, Kakashi, you've killed him. Come on, let's go confess to the Hokage." Kakashi finally sensed the malice emanating from beneath him, but regrettably, it was too late. Even if Madara launched a frontal attack, he might not be able to evade it, let alone a stealthy ambush. Secret body technique, Millennium Kill, accompanied by a pitiful wail. Kakashi's face flushed with crimson before swiftly turning a shade of purple. The excruciating pain from the targeted area caused him to lose his typical impassive demeanor. Had it not been for the mask concealing half his face, his features would have contorted visibly in that moment. Madara discovered that Danzo's base was well hidden, as if villains genuinely preferred to operate underground. Utilizing Obito's ability to traverse through Earth, Madara located the root organization's headquarters beneath Konoha. But are we not also underground? Does that imply we are villains too? Obito's voice interjected at an inopportune moment. Do not speak out of turn. I am merely maintaining a low profile. Do you understand? Then why silence? Do not dwell on this matter any longer. Obito attempted to ask further questions, but Madara had no intention of indulging in such discussions. Shortly after Madara departed, the fox-masked figure reappeared in a corner of the sofa, inquiring with feigned casualness. Has he left? Indeed, you are quite ungrateful for leaving me alone. Were it not for my missing stick, I would have certainly dealt with you. Your words suggest we are partners, one providing intellect, while the other provides strength. Do you take me for a fool? Next time, I will devise the plan, and you shall execute it. I refuse. I am the strategist. Do not summon me for physical labor. Madara mused that in comparing himself to Danzo, he felt almost like a benevolent saint. How to describe the situation? If one were to consider the varieties of bloodline limits, the small laboratory contained a greater number than any existing ninja village. Among the comatose ninjas, both men and women of various ages bore the marks of experimentation. Their bodies occasionally convulsed, indicating their dire condition. As Madara wandered through the room, regardless of whether the cursed seal was triggered, it would not result in death. It merely induced temporary paralysis. Madara felt no moral qualms about this group of researchers, who were undoubtedly complicit in Danzo's experiments. If all were sentenced to death, there might be innocents among them, yet a selective execution would surely ensnare some guilty parties. Madara halted the wood release from continuing to absorb the chakra of the unfortunate soul. Under the circumstances of the cursed seal's activation, further absorption could lead to his demise. After all, he was the first to have defected from the shadows. The villagers lamented Danzo's heinous deeds, recounting absurd tales of his mischief, such as peeping into women's baths or stealing candy from children. Cease. What nonsense is this? Are you mocking me? Madara interjected, unable to bear the absurdity any longer. Isn't this what you wished to hear? The individual responded, astonished. I assumed you intended to reclaim your position as Hokage and sought a justification to compel Danzo to resign. If he truly were Hashirama Senju, how to encapsulate the brutality of that group? The unfortunate individual, once bound like a mummy, had ballooned in size. Witnessing their fervent will to survive left Madara feeling almost embarrassed. Before he could intervene, they might very well kill their own. Enough. If you continue this, he will perish, and your crimes will only become more severe. Upon hearing this, those who had been mercilessly assaulting him ceased, although one individual, still unsatisfied, delivered a couple of final kicks to the mummy, insisting there was no personal vendetta involved. Reanimation. Danzo was initially shocked. Could it be that after Lord Tobirama's demise, another had mastered this forbidden technique? No, that is impossible. Only he and Hiruzen possessed the authority to view forbidden techniques within Konoha. To pilfer the scrolls undetected would require strength rivaling that of a Kage. Could it be Orochimaru, that untrustworthy scoundrel, who learned this forbidden technique and withheld it from me? No, it could not be. As he pondered this, Danzo feigned profound sorrow, breaking into a theatrical lament. Forgive me, Lord Hashirama. I was momentarily blinded. In my quest to protect Konoha, I lost sight of what truly mattered. Thank you for your teachings. I vow never to err in such a way again, dedicating myself wholly to the village. Tears streamed down his wrinkled cheeks, and as he struck his chest in regret, one might almost believe he genuinely repented for his past misdeeds. Surprised, are you? How does it feel to have your long-hidden secrets unveiled? Madara felt as though he were embodying a certain Uchiha's dramatic flair, unable to restrain himself from indulging in the performance. What? He is of the Uchiha clan? That explains everything. No Uchiha can resist the temptation to show off. Indeed, nearly every notable name among them was a seasoned thrill-seeker, often cloaked in laughter. With only a handful of exceptions. Fortunately, he had ensured that Kiba remained outside for training. Keeping him within the organization would have rendered years of his experimental efforts utterly futile. As Danzo plummeted through the corridor, a flicker of relief coursed through him. The duration of the impure world reincarnation technique was finite. Although the base would undoubtedly be rendered inoperative after such a tumultuous upheaval, as long as he drew breath, the roots remained intact. Despite the grievous losses in personnel, once he extricated himself, he could retrieve those members who were on duty and had abandoned the roots, thus maintaining his role as the shadow of Konoha. After confirming that Danzo had moved on, Madara dispelled his transformation technique. A cloud of white mist enveloping him as he reverted to his original form. When he assumed the guise of Hashirama, he often felt burdened by the expectation of emulating the first Hokage's demeanor. He could not act as casually as the true Hashirama, who often appeared more like an endearing simpleton than a god of ninjas. Moreover, the last remark he exchanged with Danzo was not entirely false. Had Danzo chosen to reform today, disbanding the root organization and dutifully serving as an assistant Hokage, Madara had no intention of pursuing him. Watergate was somewhat taken aback to discover that Kakashi was familiar with someone from the Uchiha clan beyond Obito. However, he realized he had never encountered this elder Uchiha before. Before Madara had the chance to speak, Obito interjected. "Ah, Grandpa, you've come to find Kakashi too." "Obito, is this someone you know?" Watergate inquired. Recognizing that it was reasonable for Obito, also of the Uchiha lineage, to be acquainted with this unfamiliar elder. Obito scratched his nose and replied, "Well, I know him." Madara was slightly surprised to find Kakashi initiating conversation with him. Could it be that he possessed an innate talent for verbal finesse? Thankfully, he was prepared for such inquiries. As a person of integrity, he needed to articulate noble sentiments to cultivate a commendable image. It would not do to assert that ninjas were mere weapons, with missions outweighing comradeship. Individuals who made such statements typically faced two outcomes: redemption, leading them to cherish relationships more than anyone else, or failure, resulting in their demise at a critical juncture. Yet, he intended to survive at least until the final confrontation. At this moment, the Nine-Tails harbored nothing but disdain and loathing towards humanity. Decades ago, before the Beast Rampage, the Nine-Tails lived freely in the wild, awaiting the arrival of a fated individual as foretold by the Sage of Six Paths. At that time, the Hidden Cloud Village had attempted to capture the still wild Nine-Tails, assembling a considerable force, led by the newly famed brothers, Kin and Jin. The inevitable outcome was disastrous. The troops suffered heavy casualties and were compelled to retreat, with the leading brothers ambushed unexpectedly. The massive form of the Nine-Tails struggled violently, yet it remained just shy of breaking its seal, forced to withstand Watergate's assault. Watergate propelled his Rasengan, striking the Nine-Tails' abdomen, eliciting a painful roar as its body involuntarily recoiled, though its gaze grew more ferocious. Taking advantage of the Rasengan's impact, the Nine-Tails managed to sever the chains binding its right paw, finally freeing one hand to unleash its chakra, a swirling mix of red and blue. The Nine-Tails, intrigued yet still resentful, pondered the sealing prowess of Kushina. Although her skills were not as refined as Mito's, her abilities as an heir of the Uzumaki clan ranked her among the most formidable in the ninja world. Even someone as knowledgeable in sealing techniques as Shikaku would find themselves confined in such a situation. The Nine-Tails concluded that the only solution lay in brute force. Eliminating Kushina would naturally lead to its freedom. Despite its self-assuredness and vast experience, the Nine-Tails found itself perplexed by Madara's suggestion of self-destruction, wondering if it was perceived as feeble-minded. The others present regarded Madara with bewilderment, and he, feeling somewhat embarrassed by his failed jest, quickly cleared his throat to clarify his intent. "Do not misconstrue my words. Your immense power instills fear and even hatred in those weaker than you. Thus, if you were to retain most of your chakra within Kushina while allowing only a fraction to escape," the diminutive Nine-Tails, now somewhat puzzled, sensed a shift in the expressions of those around it, as if something was amiss. Examining its newly shrunken form, it noted little change aside from its dulled claws. Why, then, did they appear so astonished? The Nine-Tails twitched its furry ears, unable to quell its curiosity. "What are you all staring at? If something's wrong, speak up." Even with its coarse speech, the once mighty Nine-Tails could not help but feel a sense of vulnerability. Moments earlier, upon breaking free from its seal, the Nine-Tails had appeared beside Kushina with a resounding thud, prompting Watergate's students to mistake it for her contracted spirit beast. Rin, lacking resistance to adorable things, attempted to embrace it but retreated sheepishly at its displeased growl, feeling momentarily disheartened by her lack of charm. "Ah, I am free. All eyes upon me. Next, I shall," the Nine-Tails declared, only to be abruptly interrupted by Madara, who firmly embraced it. In the Hokage's office, sunlight filtered through the window, illuminating a mountain of documents on the desk. Hiruzen had just concluded a day filled with arduous tasks, sitting wearily in his chair. massaging his temples in an effort to alleviate his taut nerves. From his drawer, he discreetly retrieved a finely crafted crystal ball. A guilty pleasure he indulged in since many less than reputable venues were off-limits to him as Hokage. He filled his beloved pipe with fresh tobacco, preparing to relish a moment of personal solace. That fellow Danzo, he practically has mastermind written on his forehead, and yet you allow him to serve as an assistant Hokage? Have you been struck by a rogue ninja? The Nine-Tails felt a profound sense of liberation, having been inexplicably sealed for decades. To unleash a tirade against Hashirama's heir was a worthy endeavor, even if it meant returning to confinement. Although Danzo had erred in some matters, it was ultimately for the village's sake. Hiruzen attempted to counter, but the Nine-Tails' scathing remarks rendered him speechless. Have you wasted decades of your life? He is, to become Hokage, one must possess not only sufficient skill, but also prioritize the village's welfare above all else. Friends, brothers, children, and even family must take a back seat to the village's interests. Only those who can place the village's welfare above their own can truly become Hokage. While Uchiha Fugaku was mature and capable enough to serve as Hokage, he, like much of the Uchiha clan, placed too much value on personal relationships, which hindered his potential to fulfill the role effectively. In the Uchiha clan, Fugaku pondered the reasons behind the onset of the Great Ninja War in Chapter 49, without cause. The Watergate was engulfed in contemplation. When the villages were first established, there existed at least a facade of peace among the nations. The first Hokage allocated the nine-tailed beasts evenly among the 5 great nations, reserving the mightiest of them, the Nine-Tails, for Konoha. However, following the passing of the first Hokage, the first Great Ninja War erupted almost instantaneously. The catalyst for that conflict was likely the ambush perpetrated by the brothers Kin and Jin during the alliance between Konoha and Kumogakure. This war ultimately resulted in the demise of the second Hokage, the second Mizukage, the second Raikage, and the second Tsuchikage. In the final chapter, a delightful aroma wafted through the air, enticing the senses. "Ah, are you going to have some rice dumplings? There's a long queue over there," said Madara, casually ruffling Kurama's head while pointing towards a nearby dango shop. Initially reluctant, the Nine-Tails now relished the taste of grilled meat. Regarding Madara's suggestion, it dismissed it with disdain. After all, it was the Nine-Tails, the most formidable of the tailed beasts. The glutinous rice dumplings are a delicacy that one may relish. Yet for me, they hold no appeal. I would rather starve than partake in such morsels. Should one wish to indulge, let them procure it themselves, for I have no interest in these trivial human snacks. Chapter 51. A chance encounter with Uchiha Madara after satisfying his hunger. Madara was reluctantly escorting the Nine-Tails back to the Uchiha clan stronghold. Despite the beast's vocal objections to visiting the core of the Uchiha, its resistance proved futile. In a moment of distraction, Madara was jostled from behind, yet he remained steadfast, while the individual who collided with him nearly lost their footing. "Are you all right?" he inquired instinctively, extending a hand to steady the stranger, which allowed him to discern the features of the person before him. They possessed short, pale green hair, and their amethyst eyes bore no pupils, framed by a youthful visage that carried a hint of apology, likely no more than 11 or 12 years of age. Chapter 52. The mysterious third Mizukage Yagura found himself on the verge of tears. Was the warmth of Konoha's inhabitants truly so overwhelming? Despite his explicit desire to decline, they insisted on dragging him along. Moreover, their strength was astonishing. After all, he was a Nin, recognized for his prowess within his village. Yet here he was, being towed by an elder, unable to shake free. Could the disparity between the hidden mist and Konoha be so pronounced among the 5 great nations? Are the inhabitants of Konoha truly monsters? Regardless of what Yagura thought in his heart, he was utterly powerless to prevent the impulsive band from being forcibly dragged into the store. Chapter 53. What? The mastermind behind it all is actually myself? After enjoying a hearty meal, the 2 individuals and a fox languidly reclined upon the sofa. Madara had already settled the bill in advance, allowing them to depart at their leisure. Perhaps it was the fullness of their stomachs that prompted Izuna to recall the pressing matters at hand. Although the intent was to unwind, it was imperative to undertake some semblance of duty. Returning empty-handed was simply not an option, given the disposition of the third Mizukage. While one might not face execution or imprisonment, a scathing reprimand and a period of confinement were unavoidable. He rose from his seat and brushed the long staff resting against his back, preparing to take his leave. However, before departing, He contemplated the notion that traveling such a great distance to the land of water merely to rescue a certain bespectacled individual who had been duped by Kaguya felt somewhat unjust. With a sigh, Madara resigned himself to his benevolent nature, unable to bear witness to others' suffering. His gaze drifted to the trees outside the window, where numerous birds perched upon the branches, resting. A particularly audacious little sparrow met his eyes. Despite his lack of proficiency in genjutsu, manipulating an ordinary bird was an effortless task. In an instant, the sparrow's pupils transformed into a pair of 3-tomo Sharingan. After a cursory inspection of the premises to ensure the basic utilities were functioning properly, Madara, without even changing his attire, reclined upon the soft bedding. That night, he experienced an extraordinarily restful slumber, the most comfortable he had enjoyed in quite some time. The rigid stones of the cave were ill-suited for a fragile centenarian like him. While it was said that sleeping on a hard surface was beneficial for the back, resting upon stone was undeniably excessive. Conversely, some individuals were not so fortunate that night. After decades of confinement, they finally found themselves. The following morning, Madara indulged in an uncommon lazy start to the day. In this frigid world, only the soft bedding could offer a semblance of warmth. Nevertheless, shortly after the sun ascended, he rose from his slumber, attended to his personal hygiene, and prepared to venture forth. As for Kurama, last night, that fellow was so exhilarated that he did not succumb to slumber until the stroke of midnight. Presently, he lies sprawled on the carpet of his chamber, curled into a ball, with only 9 fluffy tails protruding. Ban is neither a feline nor a canine. Yet one must admit, those 9 tails swaying before him are quite captivating. In Chapter 57, the most significant episode featuring the Sharingan, Kaya managed to control Ban for a good 10 minutes, offering apologies and proposing to treat him to a meal, leaving Ban utterly speechless. He had not suffered any tangible losses, and considering that Iruka was still under 10 years of age, a time of innocence and playfulness, his willingness to apologize was indeed a rarity. There was no need for such exaggeration. As Ban contemplated how to extricate himself from this situation, a figure hurriedly dashed across the rooftop, indiscriminately hurling several kunai and shuriken behind him, one of which fortuitously aimed at Iruka's back. This kunai happened to fall directly within the line of sight of the Kaya household. In Chapter 58, Deductions Leading to Hellfire, Ban declared, "All right, enough of this spectacle. Everyone disperse." With the well-being of the public in mind, he began to disperse the villagers who had gathered out of curiosity. Although the onlookers were unaware of the circumstances, they recognized the Uchiha emblem behind Ban and naturally assumed he was part of the Konoha security forces, apprehending spies infiltrating from other villages. Though this security officer appeared to be of advanced age, the very fact that he had survived to such an age as a ninja implied that his prowess was undoubtedly formidable. At this stage of the trial, nearly every Chapter 59, is it truly sent? Fujitaka stood up, pondering while finishing his somewhat cold coffee. As the clan leader, it was only natural for him to endure a bit of hardship if it meant improving the lives of his clan members. However, it was indeed rare for someone to specifically request an audience with him. Typically, few dared to approach the headquarters of the police force, let alone seek out a particular individual. Could it be that something had transpired at home, with Mikoto or Itachi seeking him out? It is highly improbable. As the majority of the police force comprises members of the Uchiha clan, it is inconceivable that they would not recognize the two of them. In Chapter 60 of The Rich, within the confines of the office, Fuyue found himself unable to conceive a solution that would satisfy his discerning mind. Meanwhile, Ban stood before the floor-to-ceiling window, reveling in the breathtaking beauty of the Hidden Leaf Village. Unnoticed in the corner, a grass village ninja remained ensnared in an illusion, his expression vacant as he stood against the wall. It remains a mystery how the technological advancements in the ninja world have evolved. Although a comprehensive electrical grid has been established throughout the village, the natural environment appears to have remained largely unscathed. Could it be that they have mastered some form of highly efficient renewable energy? Could it be that the captured prisoners are confined below, compelled to gather chakra daily to generate electricity? Well, upon reflection, this notion seems rather implausible. Chapter 61, Born of Mother. Contemplating this further, the composition of the Akatsuki organization appears quite intricate. The trio led by Nagato hails from the land of rain, Kakazu comes from the land of waterfalls, Haiden from the land of hot water, and Kisame, along with the now deceased Hashigaki, originates from the land of water. The art-loving Scorpion and Deidara hail from the land of wind and the land of earth, respectively, while Itachi and Orochimaru are renegade ninjas from the land of fire. Apart from the land of lightning, members from the other four nations have joined the fray. Oh, I nearly forgot about Ju. He could perhaps be considered a product of his mother's lineage, as he was born before the very concept of nations came into existence. Speaking of which, Chapter 62, Spring has arrived, heralding the season of rejuvenation. It is not sufficient for Koyuki and Fugaku to be in the know. I must also inform Kurama. For should fortune not favor me, encountering Nagato's dark transformation in the land of rain could lead to the immediate annihilation of the Nine Tails by the Outer Path Golem. As I traverse the streets of Konoha, observing the bustling crowds around me, a profound sense of solitude washes over Madara. Regardless of whether he is Madara or someone else, all former companions have long since departed. In this moment, Madara feels like an outsider in this world. Not only are his peers gone, but most who have laid eyes upon him are also no longer of this realm. In this harsh ninja world, Chapter 63, A Tumble of Oil, Moving Toilets. Madara swiftly recalls the precautions necessary for the land of rain, with the primary objective being to prevent Nagato's descent into darkness. At the very least, he must rescue Yahiko and Konan while minimizing casualties as much as possible. The bond between Nagato, Yahiko, and Konan is not only deep but also comparable to that of brothers, having grown up together and trained under the same master. United by the same dream to establish the Akatsuki. It is no exaggeration to say that even brothers who have grown up together may not share a bond as strong as theirs. Chapter 64, Violating Heavenly Laws. Well, in any case, among the 6 paths of pain, aside from the Deva path, which utilizes Yahiko's corpse, the other 5 are merely puppets that can be replaced at any time. The abilities of the 6 paths of pain stem from the Rinnegan. It is of little consequence whose body is employed. Once transformed into Pain's puppets, they seem unable to inherit the jutsu of the deceased. Although in the future 4th Great Ninja War, Obito resurrects 6 Jinchuriki, using impure world reincarnation to create a new 6 paths of pain. The new Pain inherits the jutsu of the Jinchuriki, but lacks the powers of the Rinnegan. Chapter 65, Departing from Konoha. Another serene afternoon finds Inuzuka Kiba, the future head of the Inuzuka clan, strolling with his beloved ninja dog, Akamaru. Although she longs to participate in the fierce battles on the front lines, her elders confine her to the village to maximize her potential. Her gift lies in training ninja dogs. No matter how fierce the breed, under her guidance, they become obedient. In the renowned Inuzuka clan, no one surpasses her in the art of nurturing ninja dogs. Chapter 66, What to Do? Only kill. The land of fire encompasses a vast expanse, the largest among the 5 great nations, and currently the most extensive nation in the world. Konoha lies slightly left of the center of the land of fire, and in every aspect, it can be considered the heart of the nation. The land of fire may survive without its daimyo, but it cannot thrive without Konoha. Even if Madara runs at full speed, nearing sonic velocity, he cannot escape the land of fire in a short time. Every couple of hours, he must rest in the villages along the way to allow Zetsu time to gather chakra. Chapter 67, Are you angry? Looking at the earthen wall blocking his path, Madara feels no agitation. In fact, he is almost amused. Has a Wagakure become so complacent with their earth techniques that they harbor a delusion about their efficacy against him? Regrettably, even if the entire ninja alliance were summoned to unleash a massive earth wall, it would be futile. Dirt is merely dirt, and even chakra-infused earth cannot withstand his power. Under the assault of Susanoo, a single punch causes the towering wall to collapse, reverting to mere dust upon the ground. Chapter 68, What Lies Behind the White Mask? Once the flames were extinguished, the houses consumed by fire were finally revealed, charred and unrecognizable. Fortunately, without the flames obscuring vision, the Sharingan detected a significant amount of chakra throughout the village, indicating that numerous survivors remained, though their exact circumstances were unclear. After dispatching 4 minor foes and quelling the raging flames, Madara finally had the leisure to observe the rather unconventional leader of the renegade ninjas. Chapter 69, Partners in Justice? Thank you, esteemed ninja, not only for avenging our village, but also for your willingness to assist in its reconstruction. A bandaged elder grasped Madara's hand with fervor. Were it not for his physical limitations, he would likely have bowed deeply in gratitude. Madara awkwardly turned his head, ill at ease in such situations, merely nodding in silence. Though the village lay in ruins, the casualties were mercifully few. From a population of 400 to 500, the loss was not as severe as it could have been. Chapter 70. No apprentices. Madara's teaching methods can only be described as tragic. When asked how to awaken the Sharingan, he would recount witnessing the deaths of loved ones. Failure could lead to more loss. When asked about the Manjiki Sharingan, he would reply that if a friend remains, one must kill the person closest to them to attain it. This is also one of the reasons he refrains from taking on students. What if a disciple, like Nagato, were dutiful enough to send their master to the netherworld? Chapter 71. Departure. Observing Hinata Aoi, who appeared invigorated as though electrified, Madara found himself perplexed. Had he unknowingly engaged in verbal sparring? Her demeanor had shifted dramatically. If one were to swap her Byakugan for his Sharingan, one might even mistake her for a youthful Obito, lamenting that she should be the protagonist in a youthful tale. Clearing his throat, he sought to temper her fervor, only to be struck by a wave of embarrassment for his earlier presumptions. At the cusp of adulthood, he had nearly succumbed to tears. Chapter 72. Rice balls wrapped in stones, losing 2 teeth in a single bite. Of course, such thoughts merely flickered through his mind. He would never voice them, as Madara prided himself on his dignity. Unless one were an unrepentant rogue like Zetsu, could this be the reason Obito, while masquerading as Zetsu, felt liberated? It appeared he donned a mask, yet in truth, he shed the mask he had worn for so long, unencumbered by identity. Chapter 73. The rain continues to fall, yet my heart remains untroubled. Madara extended his hand from beneath his cloak, feeling the chill of raindrops striking his palm, and after a moment, withdrew it. Thankfully, it is not Nagato in power. Otherwise, the Rain Tiger Freedom technique would likely have detected his intrusion. Hans, on the other hand, is more pragmatic, merely assigning a few guards to watch the gate. However, this technique is only effective in the perpetually rainy land of rain, as it essentially involves infusing chakra into the rain, allowing the user to sense the abnormal chakra of intruders. However, the drawbacks of this ninjutsu are quite evident. It is heavily reliant on usage. Chapter 74. Having seen death numerous times, witnessing life still feels somewhat unfamiliar. Obito couldn't help but stroke his chin. To be fair, he had never seen Yahiko in his youth in action. His most profound impression was of Yahiko willingly throwing himself onto Nagato's kunai to save the captured Konin. As for the events that transpired after he became Pain, they were no longer related to Yahiko himself, but were instead orchestrated remotely by Nagato. The two had barely waited outside for a few minutes when someone opened the grand door. A young man with orange spiky hair, wearing a Rain Village forehead protector, emerged. It was none other than Yahiko, the current leader of the Akatsuki. Chapter 75. Successfully joining the Akatsuki. If Obito were aware of his thoughts, he would undoubtedly laugh out loud. Had he not showcased a modicum of his abilities to Yahiko, would he not have been dismissed as an ordinary old man? It was precisely because he demonstrated capabilities that warranted recognition that Yahiko would take him seriously. Otherwise, he would hardly have paid heed to his words. Gentlemen, please follow me inside. Regardless of your intentions, at least for now, you are acknowledged guests. Yahiko still did not comprehend Obito's motives, but given the circumstances, he led the two into the Akatsuki's domain. Chapter 76. You are my eyes, in a physical sense. The young man who intruded was none other than Nagato, also a disciple of Jiraiya. At this moment, his medium-length red hair fell over his right eye, revealing only his left eye, the purple Rinnegan. Yahiko's mouth opened and closed, struggling to articulate a word. He could not blame Nagato for intruding out of concern, yet his actions had rendered the atmosphere quite awkward. Nagato understood this as well. He intended to apologize immediately, but his natural shyness rendered his mouth as immovable as if filled with cement. Chapter 77. Unable to resist making mistakes. As the situation stabilized, Yahiko finally breathed a sigh of relief. Although Nagato could initially control the power of the Rinnegan, there was still a risk of losing control if emotions ran high. In the past, Jiraiya had intervened to stop him. If Nagato were to lose control now, neither he nor Konin would likely be able to contain him, and it was futile to rely on anyone else. To be frank, he had always harbored doubts about the origins of Nagato's Rinnegan. According to Nagato himself, he did not understand why he possessed it. Jiraiya had once mentioned that it was believed to be. Chapter 78. Angel, in all seriousness. Nagato led the two away from the Rain Village, ultimately halting before a desolate valley. Regardless of what you see next, I hope you can keep it a secret. Nagato instructed, then rhythmically knocked on the rock wall several times. The adjacent stones quietly sank into the ground, revealing a vast cavity behind them. Oh, is this the standard secret base of a major organization? Obito's interest was piqued. He had assumed the current Akatsuki was merely a ragtag ensemble. Yet it seemed there was more substance to it. Chapter 79, Direct Action, Bold Enough. A gentle flap of the wings behind Conan lifted her into the air, allowing her to traverse the cave's surroundings at remarkable speed. How about it? Aren't you envious of me? If you ask nicely, I might even take you flying. Compared to her future self, Conan was less composed at this moment, infused with a touch of youthful exuberance. Thank you, but I must decline. I have no desire to be smashed into a pancake. If you find yourself with nothing to do, Yahiko is still looking for you. You could go to him now. Reflecting on the illustrious past of his dear friend, Nagato did not hesitate. Chapter 80, The Invitation of a Demigod. If possible, Obito wished to immediately send the troublesome fox back to Konoha, but the current circumstances did not permit such an action, setting aside the time required for a round trip. Since it had managed to escape once, there was reason to believe it could do so again. Obito grasped the back of the Ninetail's neck and delivered 2 solid knocks to its head. The force was considerable, prompting it to rub its head with its paw. How dare you disrespect the great Ninetails? Once my strength is restored, I shall capture you and give you a taste of your own medicine. Chapter 81, The Timid Demigod. Blending into the crowd, Obito silently observed everything. It appeared Hansa's popularity in the Land of Rain was possibly greater than he had anticipated. As a small nation that had long been weakened, its precarious position at the intersection of 3 great countries made the Land of Rain's status in the shinobi world rather delicate. Should the Land of Rain fall, the nations that occupied its territory would inevitably border the other 2 great powers, making them susceptible to joint attacks, potentially igniting conflict that could spill into their own borders, an unwise endeavor. Thus, as the Land of Rain neared its demise, nations. Chapter 82, Fellow villagers opened the door, sending warmth. In the blink of an eye, half a month had passed since Obito joined the Akatsuki. During this time, although numerous earth-shattering events had not transpired, the war among the great nations remained at a stalemate. Even when skirmishes occurred, casualties typically numbered only a handful. Since the Land of Rain was not the main battlefield in this war, and given that the Akatsuki was not an aggressive organization, Obito had scarcely had the opportunity to take action in the past month. Tasks included helping children find lost cats, assisting an elderly woman by gathering firewood for cooking, and aiding housewives. Chapter 83, Ultimately, action must be taken. Of course, such thoughts vanished at once. As the leader of the Rain Village and a legendary ninja, Hans could not simply flee from battle. To escape in front of so many eyes would undoubtedly cause his reputation to plummet, and the extent of his deterrence against the nations would become questionable, for both the preservation of his homeland and the legacy he had fought for throughout his life. Hans could not choose to retreat. Seizing the moment while Obito spoke, he withdrew his scythe from Susanu's grasp and transformed into a puddle on the spot. Chapter 84. What? Can't we just talk? As the current leader of the Rain Village, the legendary ninja and hero of the Rain Village, Hans appeared quite disheveled. His breathing mask had fallen away, his black cloak lay abandoned, and his upper garment was no better than a rag. Even the cross-shaped scar on his abdomen was exposed. He yanked at his tattered clothing, casting it aside, a faint purple toxic gas escaping his lips. Hans scanned the gathering crowd, hastily covering his mouth with his hand, fearful of the toxic fumes escaping his body. Chapter 85. It's decided, it shall be you. Just moments ago, the 3 individuals who had been barred from entry witnessed the fierce battle and couldn't help but whisper among themselves. Even Yahiko, usually the most serious, was not exempt. After all, they were merely a group of teenagers, none of whom were older than Hans. Not shouting out loud and witnessing a clash of the strong, even if it ended in death, was a reasonable expression of normalcy. A few reckless onlookers had even attempted to climb over the wall to witness the battle between Hans and Obito up close, but fortunately, they were all driven away by the guards. Chapter 86. Ultimately, demigods are still human. Yahiko did not quite grasp Hans's words. What did it mean to be more outstanding than he once was? And who was the individual referred to? However, he understood the praise within the words and awkwardly responded. You flatter me. I merely wish to protect my companions. No, that's not right. Hanzo immediately interrupted him. for the desire to protect one's comrades is anything but ordinary. The continuous wars in the shinobi world stem from the greed harbored in the hearts of men. Yahiko, the promise I made earlier remains in effect. Now, I ask you once more, are you willing to become the future leader of Amigakure? Chapter 87. Authenticity. The first formal encounter between Hanzo and Akatsuki concluded in a manner that brought joy to all parties involved. As the mastermind behind this occurrence, Madara was savoring the local delicacies of Amigakure, preparing to bring back some local specialties to Konoha. After subtly persuading Hanzo amidst the ensuing chaos, Madara took advantage of the crowd's cover to slip away and don the Akatsuki cloak once more. This cloak, crafted from robust materials and treated with a water-repellent finish, could even be worn as a raincoat on a rainy day, despite lacking any defensive capabilities. Chapter 88. I am done pretending. What is the purpose of one's life? After indulging in the fresh and delightful cuisine of Amigakure, Madara suddenly became melancholic. I am not even human. What do you ask? The Nine-Tails had not tasted anything, remaining devoid of such superfluous emotions, speaking with unrelenting candor. As the discomfort in his stomach began to fade, Madara suddenly recalled something significant and promptly poked the fox head resting on his shoulder. By the way, how much has your chakra recovered? Chapter 89. Do not misunderstand. What I mean is understanding Yahiko's expression. Madara quickly interjected to prevent any misunderstandings. Do not misconstrue. Those eyes do not belong to him. His body cannot withstand the true power of the Rinnegan. Nagato, still trying to grasp the situation, scratched his head, wondering what the true power of the Rinnegan was. Something even Jiraiya-sensei had never mentioned to him. Are you implying that the true owner of those eyes is you? Under the concealment of the cloak, Yahiko silently formed hand seals within his sleeve. Chapter 90. What are you stirring up? Just as he was feeling awkward, Nagato took the initiative to grasp Yahiko's hand. I never liked those eyes. They are hideous, lacking even visible pupils. I would be thrilled to regain normal eyesight. Nagato, Yahiko. Just as their grip tightened, Madara hastily interrupted, exclaiming, what are you two stirring up? I do not wish to witness anything peculiar. Stop. If you wish to share your feelings, please do so privately. There are others present, so kindly respect their sentiments. Chapter 91. Money falls from the sky, but watch me push it back. As Yahiko and the others reminisced about the past, Madara had already distanced himself from Amigakure when an unexpected visitor obstructed his path. Although the newcomer was cloaked, the Nine-Tails immediately discerned his identity. Oh, isn't this the toxic-tongued fellow? Here to seek revenge, I presume? Indeed, the unexpected guest was none other than Hanzo, the hero and leader of Amigakure, who had recently battled Madara. However, Madara could not comprehend the purpose behind his obstruction, wondering if he truly had reformed. Surely he did not wish for another confrontation. Chapter 92. After a long journey, returning home to find it gone, having just returned to Konoha that morning, Madara noticed members of the Konoha police force hastily traversing the streets, seemingly searching for something. He paid little mind to it, assuming it was merely a lost pet from a prominent family, which did not concern him. However, upon arriving at the Uchiha clan residence, he found the entrance sealed and surrounded by a squad of fully armed Konoha ninjas. What is this? Which Konoha high-ranking official has lost their mind, seeking to challenge Susanoo? Chapter 93. The Toad Sage has arrived. Madara rubbed his eyes, confirming he was not hallucinating. He had indeed heard a toad speaking. Upon closer inspection, he saw a figure seated atop the toad, wearing a forehead protector inscribed with the character for oil, long white hair cascading to his waist, clad in a red robe, and wearing wooden clogs. An old acquaintance. Was this not the legendary Sannin, the apprentice of the third Hokage, mentor to the fourth Hokage, a fervent admirer of the fifth Hokage, and the teacher of the sixth Hokage, as well as the mentor of the seventh Hokage? He had even received the blessing of the great Toad Sage from Mount Myaboku. Chapter 94. Enlightenment. With Jiraiya's current prowess, he no longer required hand seals to perform most jutsu, and for Madara, the need for hand seals was even rarer. Although the Nine-Tails was currently slacking off, it could still be considered a battle. Theoretically, their confrontation should have been intense, resulting in the destruction of several streets. However, as this was the Uchiha clan's stronghold, Madara could not unleash his full power and merely engaged in physical combat to annoy Jiraiya. Meanwhile, Jiraiya, despite having techniques like the swamp of the underworld to ensnare foes, found himself in a peculiar situation. Chapter 95. Silencing witnesses. Mist. Let me sort this out. First, Lord Mito has passed away, and the new host of the Nine Tails is none other than Kushina of the Uzumaki clan. Jiraiya held his forehead, still reeling from the shock. Madara nodded, explaining that as a contemporary of Hashirama and Madara, Mito would experience rapid aging after the extraction of the Nine Tails from her body, compounded by her pre-existing will to die, making her survival impossible. Unless someone has prepared a reincarnation package for her, Madara mused. If so, I would gladly have a share. Thank you. Chapter 96. To speak the truth is to be disbelieved. How does this relate to Danzo? Madara pondered, recalling his knowledge. Among the bodyguards of the second Hokage, aside from Hiruzen Sarutobi, who held the Hokage position, and Uchiha Kagami, who died young, Danzo Shimura wielded the most power. While Kohori Udatane and Hamura Mitokado served as advisors to the Hokage, their status was more symbolic than substantive. Had it not been for Hiruzen's leniency, they would have been little more than mascots. As for Akimichi Torafu, the honest man held a position, but it was hardly influential. Chapter 97. The true reason for the Nine Tails' escape this situation could hardly be blamed on Jiraiya, for while there are jutsu in the shinobi world capable of resurrecting the dead, such as the reanimation jutsu or dragon's life rebirth, few dare to utilize them. These techniques are exceedingly difficult to master, often requiring unique bloodlines, and upon resurrecting the deceased, the caster enters a near-death state, essentially sharing their life force with the revived. The requirements for both the caster and the deceased are stringent. First, the body must be intact, as a desiccated mummy cannot be revived. Chapter 98. Transform for me. The Nine Tails' words plunged those present into silence. As humans, they could hardly endure the psychological pressure of consuming raw meat, and their stomachs would likely protest first. Transforming into projectile warriors was one thing, but the parasites in raw meat posed a genuine lethal threat. Among the trio, Jiraiya's expression was the most complex, for during his time studying at Mount Myaboku, he had indeed consumed various insect dishes for quite some time. His friends, the couple Zesho and Shima, were exceedingly hospitable, always preparing a bountiful feast for him. Yet in the beginning, it had been quite the ordeal. Chapter 99. The ancient kingdom of Lulon. What I am about to say may be difficult to believe. Approximately 6 years ago, a mysterious figure suspected of having traveled from the future made an appearance. As an unrelated party, Jiraiya was early on requested to leave, leaving only Hizashi and Madara in the office, along with a fox. I understand that you might think I am speaking without basis, but according to intelligence, the man who suddenly appeared bears a striking resemblance to a rogue ninja from Sunagakure named Baizoku, making it nearly certain that they are one and the same. Madara couldn't help but raise an eyebrow. If he recalled correctly, Chapter 100 revealed that Kushina could be the woman who would become my mother. Alas, my life has been one of toil. Upon returning, there has been no time for rest, and I must soon depart again. With a sigh, Madara accepted the documents handed to him by Hizashi, which contained information pertinent to the mission. He had glanced through a few pages, finding that most of the information was of little use, largely consisting of intelligence he was already aware of. For instance, this rogue ninja Baizoku was purportedly highly skilled in puppet techniques, claiming to be the strongest puppeteer in the world. Madara held a skeptical attitude towards this. If he were truly that formidable, would he not be able to evade pursuit? In addition, there were merely introductions to Lulon. Chapter 101. With 900 nights remaining until the 1001 nights. Observing the gluttonous manner in which Kurama devoured his food, even Madara, who was not particularly hungry, felt a twinge of appetite, though he hesitated to voice it. There is a distinct difference between being offered food and requesting it oneself. Stop lingering outside. Come in and sit for a while. I will brew a pot of tea for you. Feel free to make yourself at home. Kushina turned back to the kitchen. Seizing the opportunity while she boiled water, Madara struck Kurama on the head, stealthily pilfering an untouched cookie from the plate before him. Enough eating. We have a mission at hand and no time to waste. Chapter 102. Encountering a rogue merchant in the desert, we fought with all our might and emerged victorious. Once it was confirmed that Kushina was fine after separating from the Nine Tails, Madara could finally breathe easy, hoping that Naruto would not inadvertently meet his demise. He had plans for Naruto and Sasuke to take the front line when the time came. What, you ask what role I'll play then? As an elder, my duty is to appear only when my juniors can no longer withstand the pressure. I have labored my entire life. Is it not time to enjoy life a little? As he reluctantly departed from Kurama, who was becoming increasingly lethargic. Madara mused over how this creature had likely become spoiled under his care, knowing nothing but eating. With a dwindling passion for battle. Chapter 103. Why must one be denied proper rest? The desert in the southwest of the Land of Fire is characterized by the oasis upon which the kingdom of Lulan is based. To reach Lulan, Madara must traverse this expanse of desert. Even he wished to avoid crossing the sands on foot, as the temperature fluctuation between day and night is extreme. The sand by day could roast meat as if it were a grill, while at night it was cold enough to witness water freezing upon contact. Although he and Kurama were far from ordinary beings, it did not mean they could disregard the external environment. Standing on 50-degree sand would still scorch their feet, and the cold winds would still induce shivers. Chapter 104. The fox's tail cannot be hidden. In his current state, Madara was merely venting his anger instinctively. Once he regained clarity, he would likely have no recollection of his actions, akin to waking up on the wrong side of the bed. Seeing his target vanish, Madara, still seething, turned his ire upon Kurama. Anyone who dared disturb him would be silenced. He leapt into the air, unleashing several fireballs shaped like dragon heads, simultaneously sealing off all of Kurama's escape routes, forcing him to endure the onslaught. The last thing Kurama could do was wrap his tail around himself. Chapter 105. A complimentary tour guide acquired. No more tears, no more tears. I beseech you, kind sir, spare my life. I have an elderly mother of 80 and a 3-year-old child. The man clung to Madara's leg, weeping profusely while attempting to wipe his snot on his cloak. Madara quickly withdrew his leg, delivering a kick. Dust was one thing, but if it got smeared with mucus, he would have to part with the garment. He had not even inquired about the man's name, but now thought it fitting to simply call him Blondie. Scram, scram. You appear to be merely in your 20s. Where is this 80-year-old mother of yours? I said I wouldn't kill you, and I shall not go back on my word. Hurry and get up. Chapter 106. Desert camping. The camel dealer did not lie. His camels were indeed well trained. Even though Kurama's tailed beast ball had created a crater several meters wide, the camel remained nonchalantly chewing on a cactus not far away. This young camel not only weathered the aftermath of their battle unscathed, but also retained all its burdens, exhibiting a mindset far superior to that of the aforementioned Blondie. Once back atop the camel, Madara roused the dazed Blondie. What are you dawdling for? Since you know the location of Lulan, lead the way. Chapter 107. Returning the item to its rightful owner. Madara calmly spent his first night in the desert, undisturbed by any unwelcome visitors. The following dawn, before the sun had risen, he was already awake. Although the surroundings were pitch black, he discerned the situation within the tent. Kurama lay sprawled in the center, his 9 fluffy tails tucked beneath him, his exposed belly rising and falling with each breath, occasionally smacking his lips as if dreaming of something delightful. This 9 tails is rather rotund. Perhaps we should take him to the river. Chapter 108. The grand stage of the desert, dare you come forth? Madara was not a psychologist, nor was comforting others his forte. He found action far more suited to him than words. However, witnessing Gaara's despondent demeanor, he could not help but speak. Do not be overly pessimistic. Within a year or two, this war will likely draw to a close. Afterward, what will change? At most, a different country will come to power. For those of us living on the fringes, what difference does it make who wins or loses? A flicker of light returned to Gaara's eyes, though his expression remained indifferent. Chapter 109. Breaking through the door, physically. Today marked Madara's 3rd day in the desert. Barring unforeseen circumstances, he would reach Lulan by this afternoon, provided no uninvited troublemakers intervened. However, as is well known, when one least wishes for something to occur, it often does. That fan is the wind god. Everyone run. A group of rogue ninjas collided with Madara and his camel, hurling shuriken at him in a frenzy. And taking advantage of the moment he raised his fan to defend himself, they promptly turned to flee. Chapter 110. The Puppets Strike. Even with the city gates toppled, the puppets clad in guard uniforms exhibited no reaction, remaining motionless at their posts, indifferent to Madara's actions. TSK, 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 this fellow Baizoku is rather lazy. These puppets have not even been equipped with basic cores, rendering them no different from wooden stakes. Madara's assessment of the puppets created by Baizoku could be succinctly summarized in 2 words: worthless. They were too unsightly even to be used as mere decorations, much less suitable for firewood. Stepping through the collapsed gates into Lulan, Madara observed the architectural style surrounding him. Chapter 111. Hellfire. I have already tried it. After Madara's unilateral domination concluded the battle, the surrounding environment was left in utter disarray. The once even ground was now pockmarked, scattered with the remnants of clay puppets, dismembered limbs, and broken parts strewn about, as if a war had just transpired. Despite the uproar, the entire city remained eerily silent, enveloped in a deathly stillness. Although it is noon, Garu still feels as if he has fallen into an ice cavern. He cannot help but rub his hands together, despite the sun blazing at its zenith. Chapter 112. Revenge is a cycle. By the way, have you seen Kakashi? It seems that when Minato undertook a mission, he brought him along. If all goes as expected, he should be nearby. Although most of the plot lines from the theatrical versions have faded from his memory, he recalls that at the conclusion, young Kakashi was escorted by Yamato, so he should indeed be around here. Ah, is Kakashi-senpai here as well? I am terribly sorry, but I have not yet encountered him in this place. No wonder Yamato had little screen time in the original film. It is as if he knows nothing at all. Chapter 113. The Golden Flash. What can you say? A pretentious little brat. Let me educate you on behalf of Minato. The enraged Kaibai, feeling mocked, could hardly contain his ire, wishing to swipe at Kakashi's face, compelling him to don an eye patch over his left eye. Could everyone please hear my perspective first? Perhaps we should seek Naruto. He traversed here with the centipede and might hold some insights. Yamato spoke with utmost politeness, influenced not only by his inherent disposition, but also by the esteemed identities of those present. A new year, a new beginning. What day is it today? The atmosphere outside is so lively, it feels just like a festival. Fool, today is indeed the new year. Is it the new year? Then why must we still work? Because we are but beasts of burden. Oh, did Lord Fugaka glance at you as he passed by with his wife and children? Ahem. What I mean is, it is our duty to ensure the safety of the citizens of Konoha during the New Year celebrations. On the streets, 2 members of the police force burn brightly. New spring? Phew, that brat Kankuro truly gives me no peace of mind, while Gaara, understanding, ensures not to incite his father's ire. Here, this is your gift, as I noticed you seemed quite interested earlier. After chastising the indiscreet Kankuro, Gaara presented a pot of cactus resembling a fox's tail to him. The people of Konoha, so inventive, even named the cactus Nine Tails. Have they forgotten that the nine-tailed fox nearly destroyed their village in days of yore? Gaara gently stroked the soft cactus. Chapter. New Year's final chapter, approximate. Even during the new year, youth is eternal. Indeed. Well said, father. Oh, this is the essence of youth. 3 individuals of vastly differing ages, clad in identical green spandex, each sporting the same watermelon hairstyle, were running in unison around Konoha, leading onlookers to mistakenly believe that Konoha had created clones. Despite age and injury preventing him from fully utilizing the 8 gates, Might Dai nonetheless took his son, Guy, for a morning run through the streets of Konoha. Chapter 114. A heroic rescue. But the hero has changed so. This means that the centipede arrived 6 years earlier than us, and he has since renamed himself in Lushan, acquiring most of Lulan's authority. While the current queen remains oblivious, channeling the power of the dragon vein to him. Upon grasping the situation, Naruto looked at the others with confusion. Since the queen controls the dragon vein, why don't we simply approach her and clarify, requesting that she cease supplying energy to the centipede? Yamato, exasperated, rested his forehead in his palm. Did this fellow not graduate through sheer luck, lacking even such common knowledge? Naruto, focus. Chapter 115. Your name is Naruto had not pondered much. As long as he could save the person, the identity mattered little. As for Queen Sarah, when she was pushed from the tower, she was startled at first, but had no time to feel fear before being caught by a hammock woven from vines. Besides some fright, she bore no injuries. However, the two were oblivious, even though the queen had nearly perished before the eyes of many. The surrounding celebrants exhibited not a hint of surprise, continuing their festivities as if nothing had transpired. Chapter 116. It turns out Lulan is a matriarchal kingdom. Fog. Wait a moment. Who exactly is this centipede you speak of? 6 years ago, it was clearly Uncle in Lushan who appeared. He has supported Lulan throughout these years and is a man of peace. Entirely unlike what you describe, he would never create puppet weaponry. As she listened to the group denigrate her elder, Sarah could no longer contain her outrage. During her mother's unexpected demise, only Uncle in Lushan had been by her side. How could he be the villain they portrayed? I will go prove to you all that he is not the evil person you claim. Chapter 117. The queen with closed eyes Mako and the others were merely ordinary individuals, lacking the infiltration skills of a brotherhood and having no connections to bypass the guards. Their only means of traversing the city was through the interconnected underground waterways. Following her lead, they watched as she adeptly lifted the manhole cover, and the rest skillfully climbed inside. So you simply entered the palace through the sewers? Given Sarah's cleanliness, she would never have crawled through the sewers while wearing a dress. But she could no longer concern herself with such matters. Chapter 118. Open your eyes. Sarah Lay was somewhat speechless regarding Sarah. How could the current queen be so ignorant? Not only was she oblivious to her own kingdom, but she also behaved like a child throwing a tantrum. There are no welcoming subjects. Do you not understand? Upon hearing Sarah Lay's words, Sarah felt a twinge of dissatisfaction. There were indeed so many people around, and yet she claimed there were none. Such blatant falsehood. What are you saying? Do you not see how warmly these subjects are welcoming me? As the two appeared ready to quarrel. Chapter 119. Human Labor. Puppet Overseer Madara's unrelenting words deeply affected Sarah. She bit her lip, her gaze lingering on the puppet resembling her likeness, and the sight before her solidified her resolve. I still find it difficult to fully believe your words, but as the Queen of Lulan, I wish to witness the true nature of this city with my own eyes. Hearing her declaration, Madara understood that she had begun to come around, merely needing to see the puppets created by the centipede before her heart could fully relent. He withdrew the trees that had bound her. Sarah composed herself, her eyes. Chapter 120. The potential for Lulan to develop pig farming, watching the two seriously discuss how to infiltrate the factory. Madara felt compelled to question whether they had forgotten about him. Was he not human? Moreover, had Naruto perhaps forgotten that he possessed space-time ninjutsu? Now would be an opportune moment to employ it. Madara suppressed his urge to scoff, merely gesturing towards the kunai hanging at Naruto's waist. Naruto paused for a moment, then suddenly smacked his forehead, exclaiming, "Oh, how could I forget? Thank you, Grandpa Madara." Sarah had yet to react. Special Edition, The Marvelous Adventures of Uchiha Madara, Hero S Edition. My name is Uchiha Madara. I am 75 years old, residing beside the Uchiha clan's patriarchal residence in the village of the Hidden Leaf. Unmarried, I am currently in a semi-retired state, lacking formal employment. I have scarcely returned home, never smoke, and consume alcohol only in moderation. Please pause. We merely wish to know the hero's name. There is no need for such elaborate details. The venerable king wiped the sweat from his brow and interrupted Ban's self-introduction, sensing that this summoned hero differed greatly from the legendary figures documented in books. Chapter 121. The Return of the Swallows. The world has declined, and the hearts of men have grown cold. He mused on the state of things, pondering how an elderly person might struggle with mobility. Ban descended the stairs leisurely, treating in Lushan's puppet army with indifference. Who is this old man? What gives you the right to speak here? And Lushan, feeling slighted, erupted in fury. Since ascending to his position, no one had ever dared to disregard him. He immediately commanded his puppets to attack, vowing to dismantle Ban piece by piece. However, as he manipulated the chakra strings, he discovered that the puppets remained frozen in place, as if paralyzed. Chapter 122. Arriving late. Upon the manifestation of his complete Susanoo, Sarah felt her mind teetering on the brink of collapse. Could such power truly belong to humanity? And Lushan's transformation into a colossal puppet centipede was already absurd. But the elderly gentleman's metamorphosis into a resplendent azure war deity left her questioning her sanity. If not for the palpable reality surrounding her, she might have suspected that the immense pressure had driven her to hallucinations. Why the sudden silence? Weren't you just full of bravado? Didn't you vow to bring about my demise? Didn't you claim your power was limitless? Chapter 123. That day, I became light. Once all the imprisoned residents were freed from peril, Kurama retracted his chakra with an expression of concern. Life had become austere, and the Ninetales possessed no surplus chakra. Gazing upon their long-lost husbands, fathers, brothers, and children, the residents embraced one another, tears of joy streaming down their faces. Their emotions spiraling out of control with intermittent cries of happiness. Ban scratched his head, realizing that his swift intervention had forced the centipede to retract its puppet form before it could fully manifest. Fortunately, the architecture of Lulan remained unscathed. Chapter 124. What do you mean? I'm about to die? For clarity, unless otherwise specified, Ban refers to the main body, while what clone refers to the clone. After resolving the issues in Lulan, Ban was expected to take a moment of respite, yet his mind was far from tranquil. He was now confronted with the most significant and troublesome dilemma since relocating to Konoha. Soon, he might have to reunite with Hashirama in the Pure Land. Are you saying that Nagato suddenly summoned the Outer Path Golem using summoning techniques? Chapter 125, The Dark Five Spirit Kings? Prior to reaching the Rain Village, Ban had envisioned numerous scenarios, including but not limited to Yahiko's assassination, Nagato's descent into darkness, the Akatsuki's corruption, foreign invasions, and Nagato being compelled to summon the Outer Path Golem to combat foes. Initially, he believed the worst-case scenario would be to find a way to thwart a rampaging Nagato, but the unfolding events seemed even more complicated than anticipated. The Outer Path Golem wreaked havoc outside the village, its colossal form effortlessly demolishing forests and shattering mountains, obliterating anything that dared to obstruct its path. Chapter 126, 4 against 1? 1 against 4. The ability of the Azura Path allowed Nagato to summon weapons from various parts of his body, including modern firearms from alternate dimensions. The missiles he launched appeared to be inexhaustible, the explosions obscuring Ban's vision. To liken him to a humanoid weapon would be an understatement. At that moment, Nagato resembled a walking armory. Given sufficient time, he could easily raise an entire city. If an ordinary ninja were present, they would likely be incinerated before they even had a chance to react. Chapter 127. Let's go, Kurama. Is it truly acceptable for us to merely stand by and watch? Lord Hans, shouldn't we assist? One of the Rain ninjas, suppressing his fear, questioned as he observed the celestial battle unfolding outside the village. Hans remained silent, not out of reluctance to aid, but rather because he was utterly incapable of intervening. Even he could not involve himself in this conflict. For others to do so would be tantamount to courting death. Your task is to maintain order in the village. This battle does not concern you. Watching the fierce clash between the two, Hans felt a twinge of bitterness. Though they were all ninjas, the disparity in strength was glaring. Chapter 128. Next time, Nagato's demise. Not really. Black Zetsu's singular thought was to run faster, as he feared he might never see his mother again. In his lifetime, he had only experienced one moment of greater distress, when he was newly birthed and nearly discovered by his two ungrateful brothers. What had gone awry? How could Uchiha Ban, who had been deceived for decades, suddenly unveil his scheme? Black Zetsu could not comprehend it, nor did he have the luxury of time to ponder. He had barely considered this when he almost lost control of his body to Nagato. Chapter 129. Some rejoice while others mourn. Prompted by Ban. Though Nagato had yet to fully grasp the current situation, he used reverse summoning to send the fallen Outer Path Golem back, leaving behind a scene of utter devastation. Did I do all of this? Nagato lamented, surveying the destruction witnessed on his journey from the village entrance. Ban felt a tinge of guilt. In terms of destruction, the impact of the God Tree's descent was perhaps even greater than that of the Outer Path Golem, which had merely rampaged about, creating a few large craters. Chapter 130. Do ninja eyes support hot swapping? After the banquet concluded, Hans arranged accommodations for everyone, assigning the most lavish room to Ban. As soon as the door opened, Kurama eagerly leaped onto the prominent bed, half of his body sinking into the plush mattress. I didn't expect him to be so considerate, perhaps still not entirely composed. Kurama rolled about on the bed. One could only wonder how Hans would feel upon discovering that his meticulously arranged room failed to impress Ban, yet earned praise from Kurama instead. Chapter 131. Departure of Kaki. The following morning, before sunrise, Ban departed the land of rain with Kurama, notifying no one and leaving only a note to explain the situation. Ban felt that Nagato's remarks from the previous night had been somewhat extreme, and he believed it prudent to maintain a certain distance from him for the time being. After all, Nagato was a disciple of Jiraiya and could be considered his junior. It would not do to let him become blind at such a tender age. So, is this our reason for traveling on an empty stomach? Kurama questioned, perplexed by Ban's rationale. Chapter 132. The Gluttonous Fox. After Ban agreed to keep the secret of the Dragon Vein's power, Hizashi finally felt at ease. He had been on edge, fearing that one day he would awaken to find the first Hokage's visage replaced by Ban's. So now I can finally treat you to a meal? As a cheerful little fox, Kurama expressed his sole interest in what was for lunch, indifferent to the rivalries of humans as long as they did not interfere with him. All right, I will treat you now. Have you chosen which restaurant to visit? Ban was acutely aware that if he did not acquiesce, Kurama would likely hound him relentlessly. Chapter 133, The Loyal Uchiha Band of Konoha. Soon, a photograph of Kurama was displayed on the wall of Ichiraku Ramen. The image bore a small paw print, and the frame was inscribed with the words, "First champion of the Ichiraku Ramen eating contest." Beneath it was recorded the astonishing quantity of ramen consumed by Kurama, 52 bowls. From henceforth, the renowned Akimichi clan, celebrated for their prodigious appetites, shall frequently endeavor to surpass this record. Alas, I am too full and lack the will to move. Perhaps you could carry me instead. The Nine-Tails has not feasted so heartily in decades, and is momentarily unaccustomed, causing his gait to become sluggish. Chapter 134. Pray tell, are you male or female? While violence may not resolve issues, it can certainly eliminate the one who poses them. In a fit of reckless button mashing, Obito not only failed to unlock the hidden door, but inadvertently triggered the traps within the chamber. A peculiar pale yellow gas began to seep from various corners of the room, accompanied by strange sounds at the entrance. Goodness, what is this ghastly substance? The Nine-Tails retreated promptly at the first whiff, displaying an unprecedented aversion to it. It was akin to stumbling upon a chewed morsel at one's feet while strolling down the street. Chapter 135, Orochimaru, A Thought. To be candid, Madara's resurrection did not exceed Orochimaru's expectations. After all, when he excavated the grave of the first Hokage, Hashirama Senju, he casually unearthed Madara Uchiha's coffin as well, only to find it entirely empty, not a single strand of hair to be found. He surmised that Madara likely feigned his death during the battle with Hashirama, employing some means to disguise his demise. However, lacking evidence, he remained in the realm of conjecture. Upon their encounter today, Orochimaru immediately recognized Madara's identity, given the rarity of the Uchiha and Nine-Tails combination. Chapter 136. I Kill Myself. Following a cordial exchange, Orochimaru not only consented to perform the eye transplant for Madara, but also volunteered to provide Nagato with a pair of cloned fresh eyes, on the condition that Madara divulged the method to unlock the Rinnegan. In truth, Madara could impart not only the Rinnegan's activation method, but also the means to achieve the Sage of Six Paths mode. Yet, the real challenge lay in the execution. Unless Orochimaru were to take his own life, thereby potentially becoming the next incarnation of Indra, and subsequently transplanting a few cells from the reanimated Asura, he would have to wait several decades for the opportunity. Chapter 137. Madara Uchiha Nine-Tails Connection. Are you implying that the Sage of Six Paths had a brother, and that he instigated the conflict between Indra and Asura? Was it he who manipulated me into battling Hashirama? His ultimate goal is to resurrect Kagaya Otsutsuki, sealed upon the moon, and transform all living beings into biological weapons. Another Otsutsuki descended alongside Kagaya, and now only a suitable vessel is required for resurrection. In a few decades, yet another Otsutsuki will arrive, each possessing powers surpassing that of the shadows. Chapter 138. Alas, I have died. Alas, I have lived. Madara, in Nine-Tails mode, frolicked through Konoha for quite a while, relishing the experience. Upon witnessing Naruto activate the Nine-Tails connection mode, he felt an overwhelming yearning. And today he finally indulged. Hey, haven't you had enough? Aren't there matters to attend to? The Nine-Tails could no longer bear to watch and felt compelled to remind Madara, who was becoming somewhat oblivious. At this prompt, Madara recalled the pressing tasks at hand and resolved not to squander time in frivolity, since his original form required no significant effort. All he needed was to deal with Nagato. Chapter 139. Can we show some respect for the single noble? In summary, the individual who previously controlled your body incited conflict among the nations, preventing unity within the ninja world. The breakdown of peace talks between the second Hokage and the second Raikage was also his doing. To confront the crises of the present and the future, relying solely on my current form is insufficient. Thus, I seek to harness your strength. Madara endeavored to explain the existence of Kagaya's influence in a manner that Nagato could comprehend, refraining from delving into the intricacies of the Otsutsuki clan and the familial disputes among the Sage of Six Paths. Chapter 140. Come, let us harm each other. By the way, Aoi has found a girlfriend, and I hear they are preparing for a wedding, perhaps in a spirit of consolation. Nagato suddenly mentioned the Hyuga girl who had joined Akatsuki alongside Madara and ultimately remained. Ah, truly, congratulations. Do inform me once the date is set. I shall certainly be in attendance. Although the remark evoked a somewhat complex emotion, Madara sincerely extended his congratulations. Thanks to his youthful visage, Madara remained unaware of Aoi's true age, having presumed him still a minor, only to discover he had matured. Chapter 141. I kill myself. Can others achieve it? Alas, I find myself unable to act. Although Madara had resolved to take action, upon seeing that face, he found his hand unwilling to strike. Following his conversation with Nagato, Madara's plan was nearly complete. He merely needed to have Orochimaru perform the Edo Tensei, and then allow Nagato to revive him. The only obstacle was that the Edo Tensei could only resurrect the deceased, and he was still very much alive, seemingly far from the Pure Land. To ensure the success of his plan, Madara realized he must first eliminate himself. Chapter 142. The Great Compassion of Hashirama Senju. With arms crossed, Hashirama shook his head in resignation. He had originally contemplated evading confrontation, yet the first individual he encountered was Madara, as Madara's sole true friend and rival. His feelings toward Hashirama were quite complex. It was not hatred, for Hashirama had acted rightly in the past. Had he not intervened, not only Konoha but the Land of Fire would have been decimated. However, following all that transpired, Madara questioned whether he could still interact with Hashirama as he once did. After all, Hashirama had indeed killed him. Had he not implanted his Izanagi in his right eye beforehand, he would have truly perished. Chapter 143. Why is your head so pointed? Brother, why are you running around with me on your back? Before Madara could feel touched, he noticed a figure with a spiky white head approaching. The moment he laid eyes on Tobirama, his previously good mood soured. Why did this fellow always disrupt crucial moments? Brother, have you finally died? Tobirama's reaction was equally remarkable. His previously light-hearted expression darkened upon seeing Madara, his gaze sharpening. Chapter 144. The Sage of Six Paths loves eavesdropping. You claim to have something significant to discuss, yet you regale us with fairy tales? Have you lived so long that you've succumbed to senility? Tobirama had no interest in Madara's story. Such tales could only deceive children. It would be more believable to assert that the moon is inhabited by lunar beings. Do not rush. Allow me to finish speaking. The next part is crucial. Even when interrupted, Madara remained unperturbed, as his words were not intended for Tobirama's ears. Chapter 145. Does Hashirama also wish to compete in the revival? Is that so? I understand now. If possible, may I return to the living world alongside you? Hashirama bowed his head in contemplation for a moment, then uttered a phrase that nearly left Tobirama aghast. The brother who had faced death with such composure now sought resurrection? Tobirama's gaze toward Madara grew increasingly hostile. This scoundrel had led his honest brother astray. The nefarious Uchiha Madara, too wicked indeed. The eavesdropping sage of six paths felt a twinge of heartache. Not only did Indra's reincarnation cause him strife, but now Asura's reincarnation was equally troublesome. Chapter 146. The Pure Land can also make dumplings. Madara, do not take Tobirama's words too seriously. He speaks without malice. Zhu Jian gently patted Ban's shoulder, advising him not to take Tobirama's words to heart. Their relationship had soured since Izuna's death, and not engaging in conflict was a courtesy for Izuna's sake. Ban waved his hand dismissively, stating, "It's nothing. I've known him long enough to be accustomed to it." Tobirama held a certain disdain for Ban and the Uchiha clan, believing their Sharingan, despite its power, overly emphasized emotions, rendering them unstable within the collective. As the Pure Land joyfully prepared dumplings, Kyuubi was already drenched in sweat within Orochimaru's laboratory. Numerous creatures, particularly an array of vividly colored snakes, were suspended in an enigmatic green liquid on the surrounding shelves. Kyuubi had never held any fondness for such elongated beings. They were devoid of meat and could inflict painful bites. However, it wasn't merely this that unsettled Kyuubi, but Orochimaru's demeanor as he scrutinized the blood and flesh samples in his hands. Is this Edo Tensei even reliable? Why has there been no progress after all this time? Kyuubi pondered as the rising white mist swirled like boiling water, yet no sounds emerged from within. Doubts began to creep in regarding the efficacy of Orochimaru's jutsu. It can't be. I followed the scroll's instructions meticulously. Could the sacrifice be the issue? Orochimaru had never encountered such a situation before. Typically, whether successful or not, the mist would dissipate swiftly. Did you hear that? You're obstructing others from working. Can't you be a bit more composed like me? Ban seized the moral high ground, leaving Kyuubi with no choice but to swallow his indignation. Ban had initially intended for Orochimaru to resurrect Hashirama as well. But the lack of extra white zetsu meant he could not simply capture someone on site to serve as a sacrifice. He would have to wait for another opportunity to handle it himself. Were it not for the inability to perform Edo Tensei on himself, Ban would not have sought out Orochimaru, having mastered the technique decades earlier. "Are you capable of assisting in childbirth?" Ban remarked, noting the stark contrast between Kyuubi's past and present. "You traversed nearly half of Konoha merely to intimidate?" Upon returning to the rooftop, Ban found Kyuubi had been waiting for quite some time. Though Kyuubi had gradually adapted to the pace of their excursions, it couldn't resist a quip. Ban, burdened by immense pressure, saw no reason to respond. After a lifetime of conflict, it was only natural for him to seek moments of relaxation. As night fell and darkness enveloped the forest, a sinister atmosphere permeated the air, making it an unwise time for ordinary folk to venture outside. The deeper the night, the greater the risks of encountering dangers such as wild beasts, bandits, or rogues, who often preferred to strike under the cover of darkness. Fortunately, Ban was no ordinary individual. Should he encounter highwaymen, it would be them who faced misfortune. Despite the numerous flaws of his Edo Tensei body, it was not without its advantages. Scorpion had initially regarded Kyuubi as merely a talking summoning beast, not considering it particularly remarkable. However, upon witnessing Kyuubi unleash its tailed beast form, Scorpion finally acknowledged its presence. Noticing the nine tails and the fox-like appearance, he pondered whether it resembled the legendary Nine Tails. Yet, the personality and size differed significantly from the accounts he had heard. Could this be a descendant of the Nine Tails? Silence. You lot fail to comprehend anything. It is because of the third Hokage that my parents cannot return. Scorpion's emotions erupted when his parents were mentioned, his once delicate features twisted with rage, palpable hatred nearly manifesting as a physical entity, causing Kyuubi to wrinkle its nose. The intensity of Scorpion's resentment rivaled that of Kyuubi during its imprisonment, indicating that Sunagakure did not prioritize the psychological well-being of its shinobi, allowing children to bottle up such emotions. Even as Scorpion visibly lost control, Ban remained unfazed, continuing his narration. Once Ban and Kyuubi had vanished from sight, the guards recalled the puppet bound to Kyuubi's back, noting its resemblance to Chiyo's grandson. Could it be a mimicry of his appearance? Due to the original creator of the human puppet technique, the second Kazekage, designating it as a forbidden art. Even the villagers of Sunagakure would not immediately associate Scorpion with human puppetry, merely considering it a well-crafted ordinary puppet. Upon entering Sunagakure, Ban's first thought was, wow, this wretched place is still this way. Turning to glance at Scorpion, who had nearly ceased struggling, Ban observed his initial vigor had faded, his eyes now vacant. Lost in thought. First, let's visit the Kazekage Tower. Once we return this fellow, I'll treat you to a meal. How does that sound? Ban, true to his word, would not renege on his promise to treat Scorpion, but he needed to ensure Scorpion was delivered safely, as he was not keen on dining in the presence of a human puppet, which was somewhat unappetizing. Do as you wish. I possess ample patience. Unlike a certain troublesome raccoon. Oh, what a coincidence. I just happened to encounter your Kazekage on my way here, and even had a slight spar with him. Despite Ban's consistent friendliness, Chiyo remained wary, scoffing, I don't know why a Konoha ninja would disguise themselves as Uchiha Ban, but he certainly doesn't possess your knack for humor. Are you suggesting that the third Kazekage would stand idly by while his village fell into war? Listen closely. Sunagakure is indeed facing a difficult period, but so what? Their deaths are not my concern. Blame the third Kazekage for failing to protect his village. Scorpion remained unfazed, refusing to acknowledge any wrongdoing in his actions against the Kazekage, believing he was merely avenging his parents. Chiyo nearly gasped, caught off guard by his words. After the loss of both her son and daughter-in-law, she had finally found time to spend with Scorpion, teaching him the art of puppetry during that period. Ban had initially intended to praise Chiyo for her discernment in distinguishing right from wrong, unlike a certain Hokage who prioritized personal matters over public duty, only to be met with this unexpected turn of events. Not only was she unhelpful, but she also hindered him, a true liability. If Scorpion managed to escape this time, countless innocent lives would be at stake. Ban shot her a glare, seizing Kyuubi as he leaped through the hole in the ceiling. Quickly, lend me your chakra once more. I must capture that fellow. The tone of Ban rarely adopts a serious demeanor, even taking on an air of command. Chapter 159. After scolding the grandson, he reprimands the grandmother. When Ban returned with Scorpion, several components were notably missing from Scorpion's body, with parts of the mechanical structure of his abdomen exposed. Do not misunderstand. This is not a case of Ban mistreating a captive. When he found Scorpion, he was already in this state, likely having lost parts during an explosion. Just as Ban steadied himself, Chio approached with an apologetic expression about what happened earlier. Do not apologize, it is unnecessary. I have brought your grandson back, and my sole concern now is the punishment he shall receive. I would advise against mentioning anything about innocence. Chapter 160. Has Shikaku suddenly gone berserk? There is but one culprit. Before Ban could contemplate how to address the issue with Scorpion, a tremendous sound of collapsing earth and stones resonated from below, startling the entire population of Sunagakure. Most villagers appeared bewildered and panicked, unsure of the cause of the sudden uproar, while some elderly individuals began making their way to the shelters, having experienced such events in their youth. Ahem, attention all villagers. Shikaku has suddenly gone on a rampage. Most of the seals have been broken. All Chunin and higher combat personnel still within the village are to proceed to the prison immediately. This could be considered a farewell. Surely, many will inquire why there has been no update for such an extended period, wondering if I have been engaged in a revival match. The answer is quite straightforward. I have found myself unable to continue writing. On one hand, my family is urging me to seek employment, which has placed considerable psychological pressure on me. My writing pace is painfully slow. I can take 4 to 5 hours to produce a mere 2,000 words, making it impossible to sustain myself solely through novel writing. On the other hand, I find myself at a rather perplexing juncture with this book, uncertain of how to proceed. I yearn to bring joy to every reader of this work, yet this aspiration evidently surpasses my current capabilities.